My wife opened the gift I gave her and said, "Cheap, filthy trash. My ex does better than this." Then she threw it straight at my face, right there at her own birthday party. Her parents just stood there smirking. I clenched my teeth and curled my fingers into a fist. I pulled my entire investment, took back the Beverly Hills-style house and said, "From now on, you're on your own." She thought I wouldn't dare until everything disappeared. The chandelier above the dining table cost more than most people's cars. I remember thinking that as I stood there, gift box in hand, watching the light catch on all those crystal teardrops. Funny how your brain fixates on stupid details when your world is about to implode. The table was set like something out of a magazine. White roses everywhere, gold-rimmed plates, champagne flutes catching the light. Sarah's mother had insisted on the flowers. "Nothing but the best for my daughter's 32nd birthday," she'd said, as if I hadn't been the one paying for every petal. I was nervous. I shouldn't have been. We'd been married for 6 years, but I was. The box in my hands felt heavier than it should have. Inside was a vintage Cartier bracelet, rose gold with diamonds. The kind of piece you find in estate sales if you know where to look and if you're willing to spend months searching. I'd hunted for this thing for half a year, worked with 3 different dealers, authenticated it twice. It had belonged to a French actress in the 1950s. Sarah loved old Hollywood glamour. At least, I thought she did. The dining room was packed with her people. Her parents, obviously, Richard and Margaret Chen. Sitting at the head of the table like this was their house and not the one I'd designed and built from the ground up. Her sister Linda with her husband, both of them already on their 2nd bottle of wine. Her cousins, her college friends, her yoga instructor for some reason. Maybe 15 people total, all of them dressed like they were attending a gala. I'd worn a suit, navy blue, custom tailored. Sarah had looked at it earlier and said nothing. That should have been my first warning. She was holding court at the far end of the table, laughing at something her father said, her hand on his arm. She looked beautiful. She always did. Dark hair swept up, emerald dress that probably cost $5,000, diamond earrings I'd given her for our anniversary last year. The whole scene was picture perfect, the kind of thing that belongs on someone's Instagram feed with a caption about being blessed. I cleared my throat. The conversation didn't stop. I cleared it again, louder this time, and held up the gift box. It was wrapped in silver paper with a white silk ribbon, professionally done at the boutique where I'd bought it. Sarah finally looked over. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone I'd learned to recognize over the past year. The one that sounded pleasant on the surface but had something cold underneath. Another gift from my thoughtful husband. There was laughter around the table. Not warm laughter, the kind that makes you feel like you're missing the joke, except you have the horrible suspicion that you are the joke. Margaret was smirking behind her wine glass. Richard had this little smile playing at the corners of his mouth. I walked over and set the box in front of her. My hands were steady. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head. She'd open it, her eyes would light up. She'd throw her arms around me the way she used to in the beginning. Maybe her parents would finally look at me with something other than thinly veiled contempt. Maybe I'd finally feel like I belonged in this room, in this house, in this marriage. Sarah took her time with the ribbon. She had long, perfect nails, got them done twice a month at some place in Beverly Hills that charged $200 for a manicure. She picked at the bow like it might be hiding something unpleasant. The silver paper came off slowly, deliberately. Everyone was watching now. The room had gone quiet except for the soft jazz playing from the speakers I'd installed in the walls. She lifted the lid of the velvet box. For a second, just a second, I thought I saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. But then her expression hardened into something I'd never seen before, something that made my stomach drop. "This?" Her voice was flat. She picked up the bracelet by 2 fingers, like it might contaminate her. "This is what you got me?" I opened my mouth to explain the provenance, the history, the months of searching, but she didn't give me the chance. "Cheap, filthy trash." Each word was enunciated clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "My ex does better than this." The jazz kept playing. Someone's fork clinked against a plate. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what she just said. Her ex. Brandon fucking Reynolds, the trust fund kid she dated before me, the one who dumped her and married someone else within 6 months. She'd cried on my shoulder about him. I'd held her through that heartbreak, and now she was throwing him in my face at her own birthday party. Before I could respond, before I could move, she stood up. The bracelet was still dangling from her fingers. She looked at me with something that might have been disgust or might have been contempt. I couldn't tell anymore. And then she threw it, not dropped it, not set it down firmly, threw it. The box hit me square in the face. The edge caught my cheekbone, sharp and sudden. I felt the sting, felt something warm start to trickle down. The bracelet itself fell to the floor with a soft sound that seemed impossibly loud in the silence that had descended over the room. Nobody gasped. Nobody rushed to see if I was okay. Margaret actually laughed, this little tinkling sound that made my blood turn to ice. Richard raised his glass in something that might have been a toast. Linda was recording on her phone, and I stood there with blood running down my face from where the box had split my skin, and I watched my wife sit back down like nothing had happened. She picked up her champagne glass, took a sip, smiled at her father. "Thank you for the lovely party, Daddy," she said sweetly. "You always know exactly what I need." That's when something inside me shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was more like a door closing, very quietly, very finally. I could feel it happen, this fundamental change in how I saw everything. The chandelier, the roses, the gold-rimmed plates. The house around us with its custom everything and its view of the city lights. The years I'd spent trying to make this woman happy, trying to earn her parents' approval, trying to fit into a world that had never wanted me in it. I unclenched my jaw, uncurled my fists. My face was throbbing, but I barely felt it. I bent down slowly and picked up the bracelet from where it had fallen near my feet. The vintage Cartier, rose gold and diamonds, worth more than most people's cars. I held it up to the light for a moment, watching how it caught the glow from that stupid, expensive chandelier. Then I put it in my pocket. Sarah was still not looking at me. She was describing something to her mother, animated, laughing. Like I wasn't even there, like I was furniture, like I was nothing. I turned and walked toward the kitchen. My footsteps sounded very loud on the Italian marble floors. Marble I'd selected, that I'd paid for, that I'd supervised the installation of. Everything in this house bore my fingerprints. The architecture, the finishes, the fucking lighting design. I'd built this place with my own hands and my own money, and these people were sitting in it, treating me like I was the help. In the kitchen, I grabbed a dish towel and pressed it against my face. The cut wasn't deep, but it was bleeding steadily. I could hear laughter from the dining room, the pop of another champagne bottle. The party was continuing without me. It probably wouldn't have made any difference if I'd stayed or left or set myself on fire in the middle of the table. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out, stared at the screen for a moment, then opened my email. My hands weren't shaking. That was the weird part. I felt completely calm, completely clear-headed, like I'd been living in fog for years and someone had just turned on a fan. I typed out an email to my attorney. James Chen, no relation to Sarah's family, thank God. I'd used him for the real estate deals, the business contracts, the complicated financial structures I'd built over the past decade. He was expensive and thorough, and he didn't ask unnecessary questions. James, I wrote, need to see you first thing tomorrow morning, bringing all the documents. It's time. I hit send. Then I opened another email, this one to my financial advisor, Marcus Webb, the guy who'd helped me structure everything. Who knew exactly where every dollar was and whose name was on what? Marcus, tomorrow early. We're pulling the trigger. Send, one more. This one to my business partner, Tom Rodriguez. We ran a commercial real estate development firm together, 50-50 split, but most of the capital was mine. Tom, emergency meeting, 7 a.m. Don't ask questions yet. Send. 3 emails, 3 different people who would help me dismantle everything I'd built and take back what was mine. My phone buzzed almost immediately. James, awake despite the late hour, asking if I was okay, saying he'd clear his morning schedule. Then Marcus, then Tom. I walked back toward the dining room, but I didn't go in. I stood in the doorway and watched them for a moment. They were singing happy birthday now. Sarah's face glowing in the candlelight from the cake that cost $300 from that bakery in West Hollywood. She was laughing, clapping her hands, playing the delighted birthday girl. Her mother was filming on her phone. Her father had his arm around her shoulders. None of them noticed me standing there. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. I left through the front door, the custom mahogany door with the imported hardware that I'd spent weeks selecting, and I didn't close it behind me. Let the air conditioning run. Let the whole house cool down to nothing. I walked down the driveway, past the fountain I'd had installed, past the landscaping I'd paid for, past the security gate with its discreet cameras. My car was parked on the street because Sarah's guests had filled the driveway with their Mercedes and Teslas and Range Rovers. I'd driven my work truck, a black Ford F-150, practical, covered in construction dust. It looked like garbage next to all that luxury metal. I'd felt embarrassed about it earlier. Now I felt something else. Something like clarity. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time, engine off, watching the house through my windshield. Every window was lit up. I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. People dancing now, probably, drunk and happy and celebrating. Celebrating what? Sarah's birthday? Or something else? The fact that they'd finally, fully, completely broken me down. But I wasn't broken. That was the thing they didn't understand. I'd been bent, twisted, compressed into shapes that didn't fit me, but I wasn't broken. And tomorrow morning they were going to find out exactly what that meant. I touched my cheek where the box had hit me. The bleeding had stopped, but it would bruise. Good. I wanted to remember this. I wanted to look at that bruise in the mirror every morning and remember the sound of her voice when she said, "Cheap, filthy trash." Remember the laughter. Remember her parents' smirking faces. I started the truck. The engine rumbled to life, loud and rough and real. I pulled away from the curb and drove down the hill, away from the house, away from the party, away from all of it. The city spread out below me, millions of lights in the darkness. Somewhere down there were my offices, my properties, my investments, my empire that nobody in that dining room knew the first thing about. Sarah thought I was nothing. Her parents thought I was nothing. They thought I was just some guy who'd gotten lucky, married up, spent their daughter's money on toys. They had no idea. None of them did. They'd never bothered to ask what I actually did for a living. They'd never wanted to know. I was just the husband, the one who paid for things, the one who was supposed to shut up and be grateful for the privilege of being associated with their family. Tomorrow morning, I would start taking it all back. Not the bracelet, fuck the bracelet. I'd give that to charity or melt it down or throw it in the ocean. I was taking back everything else. The house, the investments, the business deals I'd structured, with her name on them because she'd said it would be romantic to build our empire together. The cars titled in her name that I'd paid for. The credit cards, the bank accounts, the stock portfolio, every single dollar I'd earned and built and multiplied. She wanted to compare me to her ex? Fine, let's compare. Brandon Reynolds lived off his parents' money and worked at his father's law firm doing fuck all. I'd built a commercial real estate empire from nothing, starting with a single rundown apartment building I'd renovated myself. I owned property in 3 states. I had a net worth that would make her family's old money look like pocket change. But I'd hidden it, structured it quietly, kept it separate. Partly because I was private by nature, and partly because, if I was honest with myself, some part of me had always known this day might come. Some part of me had known that Sarah loved what I could provide, not who I was. That her parents saw me as temporary, replaceable, beneath them. They were right about one thing: I was beneath them. I was the foundation they'd been standing on without realizing it. And now I was going to remove that foundation and watch everything collapse. I drove through the night with the windows down, letting the city air blow through the truck. My phone kept buzzing. Sarah finally, probably noticing I'd left. I didn't look. I'd look tomorrow. After the meetings, after everything was in motion. Right now, I just wanted to drive and think and plan. The cut on my face was starting to throb. Good. Pain meant I was alive. Pain meant I was done being numb. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I drove for hours, winding through the empty streets of Los Angeles like a ghost haunting his own life. Eventually, I ended up at one of my properties, a commercial building in downtown that I'd renovated 3 years ago. Top floor was still unfinished, just raw space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I had a key. I let myself in and sat on the concrete floor as the sun came up, watching the sky turn from black to gray to pink to blue. My phone had 37 missed calls, 23 from Sarah, 8 from her mother, 6 from numbers I didn't recognize, probably her friends, her sister, whoever she'd recruited to track me down. There were texts, too. I scrolled through them without really reading them. The first few from Sarah were angry. "Where the hell are you? You're so embarrassing. My guests are asking about you." Then they shifted to concern. "Are you okay? I'm worried. Please come home." Then back to angry. "This is typical. Always making everything about you. My mother is right about you." That last one made me smile. A cold smile, the kind that doesn't touch your eyes. Her mother was right about me, just not in the way they thought. At 6:30 a.m., I stood up, brushed the dust off my jeans, and headed to my truck. I caught my reflection in one of the windows on the way out. The cut on my cheekbone had scabbed over, surrounded by a dark purple bruise that spread down to my jaw. I looked like I'd been in a fight. In a way, I had been. I'd just been fighting alone for 6 years while my opponent sat comfortably in the corner, throwing punches whenever she felt like it. James Chen's office was in Century City, 20th floor of a glass tower that reflected the morning sun like a mirror. I'd been here a dozen times for various deals, always walked in feeling confident, powerful even. Today I felt different, calmer, like I'd finally stopped pretending something that was never true. His assistant wasn't in yet, but James was at his desk, coffee in hand, looking alert despite the early hour. He stood when I walked in, his expression shifting from professional greeting to concern when he saw my face. "Jesus, Aaron, what happened?" "My wife threw a jewelry box at me," I said flatly, dropping into the leather chair across from his desk. "At her birthday party, in front of her entire family." He sat down slowly, studying me. James was in his 50s, gray-haired, sharp as a knife. We'd worked together long enough that he could read me pretty well. "You want to tell me what precipitated that?" "She didn't like the gift, said it was cheap, filthy trash. Said her ex does better." I pulled the bracelet from my pocket and set it on his desk. Vintage Cartier, rose gold, worth about $45,000. I spent 6 months tracking it down. James picked it up, examined it with the practiced eye of someone who'd seen a lot of expensive things in his career. He let out a low whistle. "This is exceptional." "Yeah," I leaned back into the chair. Her parents laughed, actually laughed. Her sister recorded it, and Sarah just sat there, smiling, like she'd accomplished something. "I see." He set the bracelet down carefully. "So when you said in your email that it's time, I want out, completely. I want the divorce filed today. I want every asset I've put into this marriage identified, valued, and returned to me. The house, that's mine, deeds in my name. I designed and built it with my own money before we got married. I want her out. The investment accounts I set up with her as beneficiary, I want those restructured. The business interests I put in her name, I want them back. Everything." James pulled out a legal pad and started writing. "California is a community property state. Anything acquired during the marriage—" "I know the law," I interrupted. "That's why I had you structure everything the way we did. Separate property, premarital assets, everything documented and traceable. You told me I was being paranoid when we set it up. Remember?" A small smile crossed his face. "I remember. I also remember thinking you were the smartest paranoid client I'd ever had." He looked up at me. "You kept records of everything?" "Everything. Every deposit, every transfer, every dollar that came from my accounts versus any theoretical community property. I have 6 years of documentation showing exactly what was mine before marriage, what I earned during marriage, and how I kept them separate." "Good. What about the house?" "Purchased 2 years before we met. Titles in my name alone. She's never contributed a dollar to the mortgage, taxes, or maintenance. I have records of every payment, furniture, improvements, all paid from my separate accounts, all documented. I have the receipts, the bank statements, the credit card bills, everything. James wrote steadily, his pen scratching across the paper. You're talking about a significant asset base here. Multi-million? More. Oh, I paused. James, she doesn't know about any of it. She thinks I'm a mid-level real estate developer who does okay. She has no idea about the portfolio, the holdings, the actual scope of what I've built. He looked up sharply. You've been married 6 years and she doesn't know your net worth? She never asked, never wanted to know. As long as the credit cards worked and the house was nice, she didn't care where the money came from. I felt something bitter rise in my throat. Her parents think I married up, think I'm some working-class guy who got lucky landing their daughter. They have no idea that their old money wouldn't cover my operating expenses for a quarter. James sat back, a look of something like amazement on his face. How much are we talking about, Aaron? Liquid assets? About 40 million. Total net worth, including properties and investments, north of 120. The pen stopped moving. James stared at me. Jesus Christ. Yeah. I felt tired suddenly, bone-deep tired. I kept it quiet, separate, partly because I'm private and partly because I gestured vaguely at my bruised face. Some part of me always knew. Knew what? That they didn't love me. Any of them. They loved what I provided, the lifestyle, the house, the status of having someone who could pay for everything. But me, the actual person, they couldn't care less. James was quiet for a moment. Then he picked up his pen again. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'll draft the divorce petition today. We'll include a complete asset disclosure on your end. Everything you want to claim as separate property. We'll request immediate temporary orders regarding the residence. Given the domestic violence, it wasn't, I started, then stopped. Actually, yeah, it was. She threw something at your face hard enough to break skin and cause significant bruising. In front of witnesses. That's assault, Aaron. That's domestic violence. His voice was hard. We can use that to get you an emergency protective order if needed. Get her out of the house immediately. The thought of Sarah being escorted out of the house by police, the house she thought was hers, the house she'd redecorated and shown off to all her friends. I felt something dark and satisfied coil in my chest. Do it, James made a note. I'll need you to file a police report. Document the injury. Get photographs. We'll attach it to the petition. Fine. This is going to be ugly, Aaron. Her family has money, connections. They'll fight. Let them. I met his eyes. I've got documentation they can't refute. I've got witnesses to the assault, and I've got something they don't expect. What's that? The fact that I'm done being nice. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything, every property, every investment, every account. James took notes, asked questions, occasionally whistled or swore under his breath when I told him about a particular asset. By the end of it, he had a complete picture of my financial life, something my own wife had never had, never wanted. One more thing, I said as we were wrapping up. The business deals I structured with her name on them. The LLCs, the property holdings, I want those unwound today. Some of that might take time. No, I cut him off. I want it started today. I want her to wake up tomorrow and realize that everything she thought she had is gone. The access, the accounts, the credit cards, all of it. James studied me for a long moment. You're sure about this? Once we file, once we start pulling assets, there's no going back. This will burn every bridge. The bridges were burned last night when she threw that box at my face and her parents laughed. I stood up. I'm not going back to that house, James. I'm not going back to that marriage. I'm not spending one more day being treated like I'm nothing by people who are nothing without me. He stood too, extending his hand. All right then, let's burn it all down. I shook his hand, feeling the weight of what I was setting in motion. Then I left his office and headed to my next meeting. Marcus Webb's office was in Santa Monica, a boutique wealth management firm that catered to people who didn't want their names in Forbes but had the kind of money that could buy small countries. Marcus was younger than James, early 40s, former Goldman guy who'd gone independent. He'd helped me structure my investments for maximum growth and minimum visibility. He was waiting in his office with a pot of fresh coffee and a concerned expression that matched James's when he saw my face. "Don't ask," I said, dropping into the chair. "Just tell me you got my email." "I got it." He poured me coffee without asking if I wanted it. "You're serious about this? About liquidating?" "Not liquidating, restructuring. I want everything that has Sarah's name on it removed. Every beneficiary designation changed, every joint access revoked, every investment vehicle that gives her any claim cleaned out." Marcus pulled up something on his computer. "That's substantial. There are tax implications, early withdrawal penalties on some of the retirement accounts, legal fees for restructuring the trusts. I don't care, do it." "Aaron," he looked at me over his computer, "walk me through what happened, because what you're talking about here is scorched earth. This isn't just divorce planning, this is financial warfare." So I told him, the birthday party, the gift, the box hitting my face, her parents' smirking faces, the laughter, the casual cruelty of being treated like garbage in my own house by people living off my money. When I finished, Marcus was quiet. Then he started typing, his fingers flying across the keyboard. "Okay, here's what we're looking at. Joint accounts, we can't touch those until the divorce is filed, but we can document exact contributions from your separate property. Investment accounts with her as beneficiary, we can change those today. The trust we set up for estate planning, we can revoke that. The life insurance policies, we can change beneficiaries. The property holdings structured as joint ventures, those are more complicated, but we can start the process. Start all of it. This is going to trigger alerts. Banks will call, she'll get notifications. Her financial advisor, if she has one, will contact her." "Good." I sipped at the coffee. It was strong, bitter, perfect. "I want her to know. I want her to realize what's happening. I want her to feel it." Marcus nodded slowly, still typing. "You know, I've been doing this for 15 years. I've seen a lot of divorces. Most people want to be fair, want to split things equitably even when they're hurt." He looked up at me. "You're not interested in fair." "Fair?" I laughed, a harsh sound. "What's fair? Fair is the 6 years I spent trying to make her happy. Fair is the money I poured into her lifestyle. Fair is the respect I gave her family while they treated me like hired help. Fair is the birthday gift I spent 6 months finding. The one she threw at my face." I touched the bruise on my cheek. "You're right, I'm not interested in fair. I'm interested in taking back what's mine." "All right then." He hit a final key with emphasis. "Let's do this." We spent an hour going through everything, Marcus making calls, sending encrypted emails, starting the process of unwinding 6 years of financial entanglement. With each account he locked, each beneficiary he changed, each access point he revoked, I felt lighter. Like I was shedding weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. My phone rang. Sarah again. I declined it. It rang again immediately. Declined. Then a text. "Aaron, where are you? I need to talk to you. Last night was, we need to talk." I showed the text to Marcus. He raised an eyebrow. "She's going to tell you it was all a misunderstanding, that she was drunk, that she didn't mean it." "Probably. Are you going to listen?" "No." I put my phone on silent. I'm done listening. By the time I left Marcus's office, it was almost 10 a.m. The sun was high and hot, typical Los Angeles weather, beautiful and fake, just like my marriage had been. I had one more meeting before I could rest. Tom Rodriguez, my business partner, was waiting at our company's main office in Culver City. Tom and I had started the company 8 years ago, when I was still single and hungry and working 100-hour weeks. We'd built it together from nothing into a commercial development firm that handled multi-million-dollar projects. Tom was the operations guy. I was the money and the vision. 50-50 partnership, at least on paper. In reality, most of the capital was mine. Tom brought expertise and connections, but I brought the checkbook. He was in the conference room when I arrived. Takeout breakfast spread across the table. Egg sandwiches, coffee, fruit. He took one look at my face and said, "What the fuck happened to you?" I grabbed a sandwich and sat down. My marriage ended. Jesus. He sat across from me. Sarah did that? Sarah threw a jewelry box at me at her birthday party because she didn't like the gift I gave her in front of her entire family. Tom's expression went from shock to angry to something like understanding. Okay, so when you said emergency meeting, I need to know where we stand, the business, every deal, every project, what's in my name, what's joint, what has any connection to Sarah or her family. He pulled out a folder. Tom always had the documents ready. I figured this was coming eventually. Not like this maybe, but I could see you weren't happy, man. Was it that obvious? To anyone paying attention? Yeah. He opened the folder. Okay, the company is 50-50, clean split, no spousal interests. The individual properties, most of those are held in LLCs with you as managing member. A few have joint ownership structures, but even those have you as the majority holder. Sarah's name isn't on anything business related. Relief flooded through me. You're sure? Positive. I've been careful about that. I like Sarah fine, but I've seen too many partnerships destroyed by messy divorces. I kept our business structure clean. He slid a document across the table. Here's a complete breakdown. Every property, every deal, every account. Nothing your divorce can touch except maybe some community property claims on income earned during marriage. But even that's going to be complicated given your separate property investments. I scanned the document, feeling tension I hadn't known I was carrying start to release. Tom, you're a fucking saint. I'm a realist. He leaned back. So what's the plan? You pulling back? Taking time off? Opposite. I'm going to work. I'm going to build. I'm going to take every ounce of energy I wasted on that marriage and pour it into this company, into projects that matter, into something real. Tom smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Aaron, man, I need to tell you something, as your partner and your friend. What? Don't do the revenge thing. Don't make this about her hurting her. Make it about building something better. Because revenge is gasoline. It burns hot and fast, and then you're left with ashes. I thought about that, about what I wanted. It wasn't really revenge, was it? It was just taking back what was mine, reclaiming my life, refusing to be small anymore. It's not revenge, I said finally. It's justice. There's a difference. If you say so, he didn't look convinced. Just be careful. Don't become the thing you hate. I won't. I stood up, suddenly exhausted. I need to go. I haven't slept. I need to file a police report, get photographed, and then I need to find somewhere to stay because I'm not going back to that house until she's out of it. Stay with me. Tom stood too. Guest room's yours as long as you need it. Maria would love to have you, the kids too. Thanks, man. That's what partners are for. I left the office feeling strange. Lighter in some ways, heavier in others. The morning had been productive. I'd set everything in motion. James was filing papers. Marcus was restructuring assets. Tom had confirmed the business was safe. By tomorrow, Sarah's world would start crumbling, and she wouldn't even understand why or how. But Tom's words stuck with me. Don't become the thing you hate. Was that what I was doing? Becoming cruel, vindictive, someone who hurt people? No, I rejected that. I wasn't hurting her. I was just stopping the hurt she'd been inflicting on me. I was just taking back what was mine. There was nothing wrong with that. Nothing cruel about refusing to be abused. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Aaron, please, I'm sorry about last night. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Come home. We need to talk. I stared at the text for a long moment. 6 years of marriage, and this was what it came down to. I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Like that excused everything. Like being drunk made it okay to humiliate your husband in front of everyone who mattered to you. Like sorry could fix the look on our parents' faces, the sound of their laughter. I typed back, I'll be in touch through my attorney. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then, what? What attorney? What are you talking about? I didn't respond. I just put my phone away, got in my truck, and drove to the police station to file a report, to document everything, to make sure that when this all went to court, when her family tried to paint me as the bad guy, there would be proof of what really happened. The female officer who took my statement was professional, almost kind. She photographed my face from multiple angles, wrote down everything I said, gave me a case number. "This is domestic violence," she told me. "You could press charges if you want. Get a restraining order." "I just want it documented," I said, "for the divorce." She nodded like she'd heard that before. "Good luck," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. I walked out of the police station into the afternoon sun. My phone was buzzing constantly now. Sarah, her mother, her sister, numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off completely. Whatever they had to say, I didn't want to hear it. Not today. Maybe not ever. I drove to Tom's house in silence, thinking about what came next. The divorce would be filed tomorrow. Sarah would be served. Her parents would call their lawyers. There would be fighting, accusations, threats. They would try to make me look like the villain. They would probably succeed in some circles. But I had the truth. I had the documents. I had the evidence. And most importantly, I had my dignity back. After 6 years of slowly losing myself, of becoming smaller and quieter and more invisible, I was finally standing up, finally saying no, finally refusing to accept being treated like I was nothing. Tomorrow, Sarah would wake up and realize what she'd lost. Not just me, she'd never valued me enough to care about that. But the house, the money, the lifestyle, the security of having someone who would endure anything just to keep the peace. She'd thrown a bracelet at my face. I was going to take away her whole world. And if that made me the villain in her story, I could live with that. At least I'd be living as myself again. Tom's house was in Manhattan Beach, a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and homes that spoke of comfortable wealth without screaming it. His wife Maria answered the door before I could knock, pulling me into a hug that I hadn't realized I needed until it was happening. "Tom called," she said simply, not asking about the bruise, not making me explain. "Guest room is ready. There's food in the kitchen. Stay as long as you need." Their kids, twin girls 8 years old, were at the kitchen table doing homework. They looked up when I walked in and I saw their eyes go to my face. Kids don't hide their reactions the way adults do. One of them, Sophie, gasped a little. "Mr. Aaron, what happened to your face?" "I had an accident," I said, which was both true and not true. Sarah had been an accident. Marrying her had been an accident. But what happened last night, that was intentional, calculated, mean. "Does it hurt?" the other twin, Emma, asked. "A little." "Mommy, can we give Mr. Aaron ice?" Maria smiled, that soft expression mothers get when their children show compassion. "That's very thoughtful, baby, but I think Mr. Aaron just needs to rest right now." I did rest. For about 3 hours, I lay on the guest bed in Tom's house, staring at the ceiling. My phone still off, my mind both racing and completely blank. I kept replaying the moment. The box hitting my face, the bracelet falling, the laughter, over and over like a video stuck on loop. Each time I saw it, I felt that same cold clarity settle over me, that same sense of a door closing. Around 6 p.m., I turned my phone back on. The screen lit up with notifications. 73 missed calls, over 100 texts. I scrolled through them, not reading carefully, just getting the general sense. Sarah had gone through several emotional stages in the hours since I'd left. Confusion, anger, concern, fear. The texts from her mother had no such evolution. They were uniformly hostile. "How dare you embarrass my daughter? You're showing your true colors. Sarah deserves better than this childish behavior." That last one almost made me laugh. Childish behavior, coming from the woman who'd laughed when her daughter assaulted me. There was one text that caught my attention, though, from Sarah, sent about 2 hours ago. "Aaron, someone from the bank called. They said there are changes to our accounts. I don't understand. Please call me." So it had begun. Marcus worked fast, faster than I'd expected. The financial restructuring was already sending out ripples, and Sarah was feeling the first tremors of the earthquake that was about to hit her life. I didn't respond. Instead, I called James. "Papers are ready," he said without preamble. I can file first thing tomorrow morning. Process server can have her served by noon. Do it. Aaron, his voice shifted, became more careful. I need to prepare you. This is going to get messy. I got a call this afternoon from Richard Chen's attorney. My chest tightened. Already? Sarah's parents are smart. They saw you leave last night, saw you don't come home. They're preparing for war. The attorney, it's Daniel Morrison. You know him? I've heard of him. Morrison was one of the top family law attorneys in Los Angeles, the kind who represented celebrities and billionaires in their divorces. Expensive didn't begin to cover it. They're bringing in the big guns. They are. Morrison called me fishing. Wanted to know if I was representing you in a divorce matter. I didn't confirm or deny, but he knows. Which means they're already strategizing. I felt something harden in my chest. Of course they were. Of course they couldn't just let this be what it was. A marriage ending because their daughter was cruel and I was done. They had to make it a war. Had to protect their image, their control, their precious daughter who could do no wrong. Let them strategize, I said. We have documentation they can't fight. We have the truth. Truth is flexible in divorce court, James warned. They're going to paint you as controlling, financially abusive, maybe even physically abusive. They'll flip the narrative of, say you withheld money from Sarah, kept her in the dark about finances, isolated her. I didn't. I know you didn't, but they'll try. That's what Morrison does. He creates narratives that juries and judges buy. He paused. That's why we need to strike first. File tomorrow. Get our narrative on record. You're the victim of domestic violence. You're the one with the documented injury. You're the one walking away from a hostile situation. Okay, I rubbed my eyes. Do it. File tomorrow. Let's get this started. There's one more thing. The house. I'm putting in the temporary orders that you get exclusive use and possession. But Erin, she's going to fight that. Hard. That house is her whole identity. She's not going to leave quietly. I know. I did know. Sarah loved that house more than she'd ever loved me. She'd spent 3 years redecorating it, posting it on Instagram, hosting parties to show it off. The house was her throne, and I was about to knock her off it. Be prepared for her to refuse to leave. Be prepared for drama, for her to call the police, to claim she's afraid of you. Be prepared for anything. I am. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the gas bed for a long time. Through the walls, I could hear Tom's family, the girls laughing about something, Maria calling them to dinner, the ordinary sounds of a happy home. This was what I'd wanted. Not the mansion, not the parties, not the status symbols, just this simple happiness, genuine connection, people who actually cared about each other. I'd never had that with Sarah. I could see that now with painful clarity. We'd had excitement in the beginning, chemistry, that intoxicating rush of early romance. But care, actual deep concern for each other's well-being? No, she cared about what I could provide. I'd cared about the idea of her, the potential of us. Neither of us had really seen the other person. Maria knocked softly on the door. Dinner's ready if you're hungry. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. I joined them at the table, watching Tom's family interact. The girls told elaborate stories about their day at school. Maria listened with complete attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. Tom caught my eye across the table and gave me a small nod, like he was saying, this is real. This is what matters. After dinner, after the girls were in bed, Tom and I sat on his back patio with beers. The ocean was close enough that we could hear the waves, smell the salt air. The night was cool and clear, stars visible despite the city lights. Maria wants to know if you want to talk about it, Tom said. I already told you everything. I know, but she means really talk, like feelings talk. He grinned a little. She's worried about you, man. We both are. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're in controlled demolition mode. I recognize it. I've seen you do it with buildings. Careful, methodical, efficient. But Aaron, your marriage isn't a building. It's your life. I took a long drink of beer. What do you want me to say? That I'm heartbroken? I'm not. I'm relieved. That's what's weird. I should be devastated, right? 6 years of marriage ending, but all I feel is free. That's not weird. That's telling. Tom leaned back in his chair. How long have you been unhappy? I don't know, a while? Maybe always? I can't remember the last time I felt like she actually liked me. Not liked what I provided, but liked me as a person. The way I think, the way I talk, my sense of humor. Just me. Did you tell her that? What would be the point? She'd have either denied it or confirmed it. And either way, nothing would have changed. Sarah is who she is. Her parents raised her to believe she's exceptional, that the world should accommodate her. I was just supposed to be grateful I got to be part of her story. Tom was quiet for a moment. You know what Maria said when I told her what happened? She said she wasn't surprised, said she could always feel the temperature drop when you and Sarah were in a room together. Really? Really. She said it was like watching two people perform a marriage instead of living one. He looked at me. We could all see it, man. We just didn't know how to tell you. That stung a little. Had it been that obvious? Had everyone been watching my marriage crumble while I pretended everything was fine? The thing is, I said slowly, I knew too. Some part of me always knew. That's why I kept everything separate. Why I never fully merged our lives financially. Why I kept that escape road open. I felt something twist in my chest. Does that make me a coward? That I was preparing for this to fail, even while I was trying to make it work? It makes you smart and honest with yourself, even if you couldn't be honest with her. We sat in silence for a while, drinking our beers, listening to the ocean. I thought about what came next. Tomorrow Sarah would be served. She'd call her parents. They'd all huddle with Morrison, strategizing, preparing their counterattack. They'd try to paint me as the villain, try to claim I was taking what was rightfully hers. But the house was mine. The money was mine. I'd earned it, built it, structured it carefully to protect it. They could spin whatever narrative they wanted. The documents didn't lie. Can I ask you something, Tom said. What do you want out of this? Not legally, I know you want your assets back, but what do you really want? I thought about that. What did I want? I want her to understand, I said finally. I want her to realize that I wasn't just some convenient ATM, that I was a person with feelings and dignity and a breaking point. I want her to know that she pushed me past it. I want her to feel, just for a moment, what it was like to be treated the way she treated me. That's revenge. No, it's accountability. There's a difference. Well, Tom didn't argue, but I could see he didn't fully agree. That was okay. He didn't have to. He hadn't been there last night. He hadn't felt the box hit his face or heard the laughter or seen the smirk on her mother's face. He hadn't spent 6 years slowly shrinking himself to fit into spaces that were never meant for him. My phone buzzed. Another text from Sarah. Aaron, I'm scared. Please talk to me. Whatever you're planning, we can work it out. I love you. I stared at those 3 words. I love you. She'd said them plenty of times over the years, usually when she wanted something or after a fight she'd started. But had she ever meant them? Had she ever loved me, or had she loved the lifestyle I provided, the security, the status? I didn't respond. What was there to say? That I didn't believe her? That it was too late? That love shouldn't come with the contingency of throwing things at your face when you disappoint them? Instead, I opened my email and started going through the business correspondence I'd been ignoring. Projects that needed attention, deals that needed closing. The real work of my actual life, the life I'd built separate from Sarah's demands and her parents' judgment. There was an email from a potential investor in Phoenix, a major development opportunity, mixed-use commercial space in a growing area. The kind of project that could be transformative for the company. I'd been putting off responding because Sarah had been planning a trip to Phoenix for some spa weekend with her mother, and she'd expected me to go, to be available, to play the dutiful husband. I replied to the investor, very interested, can meet next week. Let's discuss terms. It felt good, taking action, moving forward, focusing on building something real instead of maintaining the facade of a marriage. I spent the next 2 hours on email, on spreadsheets, on project plans. Tom eventually went to bed, leaving me alone on the patio with my laptop and my thoughts. The work was meditative, centering. This was who I was, not Sarah's husband, not her parents' disappointment, not the man who'd stood there and taken their abuse. I was a builder, a developer, someone who took empty lots and turned them into thriving spaces. I could do the same with my life. Around midnight, my phone rang. Not Sarah this time, her father. Richard Chen calling at midnight, which meant he was either drunk or furious or both. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Aaron, his voice was cold, controlled. We need to talk. I don't think we do. You embarrassed my daughter. You abandoned her at her own birthday party. You need to come home and apologize. The audacity of it took my breath away. Apologize? Your daughter threw a jewelry box at my face, Richard. In front of everyone. Did you call to apologize for that? Sarah was upset. She'd had too much to drink. You should have been more understanding. Understanding? I laughed, a harsh sound. I've been understanding for 6 years. I'm done. What does that mean? It means I'm filing for divorce. It means your daughter needs to find somewhere else to live. It means the free ride is over. There was a pause, then, you can't throw her out. That's her home. It's my house, Richard. My name on the deed. My money that built it. She's been living in it as a courtesy. That courtesy is ending. You son of a bitch, his voice rose. You think you can just, after everything we've done for you, done for me? I stood up, pacing the patio. What exactly have you done for me, Richard? Besides look down on me? Besides treat me like I'm not good enough for your family? Besides laugh when your daughter assaulted me? We welcomed you into our family. You tolerated me, barely, and only because I paid for everything. But here's what you don't know, what none of you know. I don't need you. I never did. You all thought I was some working class guy who got lucky. You have no idea what I'm actually worth. What are you talking about? You'll find out when the divorce papers are filed, when the asset disclosure comes through, when you realize that your old money couldn't touch what I've built. I felt something fierce and cold settle in my chest. I'm not the one who should be worried, Richard. Your daughter is about to lose the best thing that ever happened to you. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I'm taking back what's mine, all of it. The house, the investments, everything. Sarah can go live with you and Margaret. I'm sure you'll be thrilled to support the lifestyle she's accustomed to. He sputtered, trying to find words. I could hear Margaret in the background, her sharp voice demanding to know what was happening. Tell your attorney to expect the papers tomorrow, I said. And Richard, tell Sarah that if she wants to talk to me, she can do it through my lawyer. We're done. I hung up before he could respond. My hand was shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline. I just told Richard Chen, the man who had spent 6 years making me feel small, exactly what I thought of him. It felt terrifying and liberating in equal measure. My phone immediately started ringing again. I turned it off completely. Whatever they had to say, I didn't want to hear it. Not tonight, maybe not ever. I went back inside, past the photos of Tom's family on the walls, past the signs of a real home built on real love, and into the guest room. I lay down on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling again. Tomorrow, everything would change. Sarah would be served. The war would officially begin. Her parents would deploy Morrison and whatever other weapons they had. It would be ugly, expensive, exhausting. But I'd survived last night. I'd survived years of being diminished and dismissed and disrespected. I could survive this too. In fact, I wouldn't just survive it. I'd win, because they were fighting for image, for status, for control. I was fighting for something simpler and more powerful. My dignity. My right to be treated like a human being. My right to say no. And when you're fighting for your dignity, you don't back down. You don't compromise. You don't accept anything less than everything you deserve. I fell asleep thinking about the house. My house, empty of Sarah and her things. I thought about reclaiming those spaces, redoing them to reflect who I actually was instead of who she'd wanted me to be. I thought about the office I'd build, the projects I'd take on, the life I'd construct from the rubble of this marriage. Sarah had thrown a bracelet at my face and called it trash. Tomorrow I'd show her what real trash looked like, the wreckage of the life she'd taken for granted, the consequences of treating someone like they were nothing. Tomorrow the gifts she'd rejected would be the least of what she'd lost. Tomorrow everything would burn, and I'd be standing in the ashes, finally free. I woke up at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of ocean waves and the smell of coffee. For a moment, just a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality settled back in like a weight on my chest. Not my house, not my bed, not my wife waiting in the kitchen. No, my wife was in my house, probably still asleep, probably still believing that yesterday was just a fight, just another argument that would blow over like all the others had. She had no idea what was coming. Maria was in the kitchen when I emerged, already dressed for work, making breakfast for the girls. She looked up and gave me that same compassionate smile from yesterday. Coffee's fresh. There's eggs and toast if you want. Just coffee, thanks. I sat at the kitchen counter while she moved around the space with practiced efficiency. This was what a real partnership looked like. Two people moving in sync, sharing the load, building a life together. I'd never had that with Sarah. We'd lived parallel lives in the same house, occasionally intersecting for social events or when she needed something. Tom told me you talked to Sarah's father last night, Maria said carefully. He called, demanded I apologize and come home. And you said? I told him to tell his lawyer to expect the papers. I sipped the coffee. It was good, strong, exactly what I needed. I might have also told him that they have no idea what I'm actually worth. Maria raised an eyebrow. How'd that go over? About as well as you'd expect. He called me a son of a bitch before I hung up. Good for you. She cracked eggs into a pan. Aaron, can I say something? Woman to woman, wife to, well, to someone who was a husband? Go ahead. Don't let them make you cruel. What Sarah did was awful. What her family did was worse. You have every right to be angry, to protect yourself, to take back what's yours, but don't let that anger turn you into someone you're not. She looked at me with those kind, serious eyes. Tom told me what you said about wanting her to understand. That's fine. But once she understands, once you get your assets back and your life back, let it go. Don't hold on to this forever. I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm just trying to be done. I know. I just worry that done and destroyed are two different things, and you're not always sure which one you're aiming for. Her words stayed with me as I showered and dressed in the guest bathroom. Was I trying to destroy Sarah? Or was I just trying to extract myself from a toxic situation? The line felt blurry, indistinct. Every action I was taking, filing for divorce, removing her access to accounts, reclaiming the house, was justified. Legal, documented. But the satisfaction I felt when I imagined her reaction, the anticipation of watching her world crumble, was that justice or was it cruelty? I didn't have an answer. At 8 a.m., my phone rang. James, papers are filed, he said. Process server is on his way to the house now. She should be served within the hour. Okay. There's something else. Morrison filed an emergency motion this morning. He's trying to get a restraining order against you. My hand tightened on the phone. What? On what grounds? Claims that you're volatile, that you abandoned your wife without explanation, that she fears for her safety. He's using the fact that you won't respond to her calls as evidence that you're unstable. That's insane. She's the one who assaulted me. I know. We have the police report, the photos. We're filing a counter motion. But Aaron, this is what I warned you about. Morrison is good at flipping narratives. He's going to try to paint you as the aggressor. How can he do that when I'm the one with the documented injury? He'll say you provoked her, that you've been emotionally abusive, financially controlling, that the injury is minor and you're exaggerating. James paused. This is going to get ugly fast. Are you ready for that? I'm ready. Good, because we have a hearing this afternoon. Judge wants to see both sides, hear arguments about temporary orders. You need to be there. Suit and tie, clean cut, calm demeanor. We need you to look like the reasonable party. I am the reasonable party. I know, but we need the judge to see that. After I hung up, I sat in Tom's guest room trying to process a restraining order against me. For what? Refusing to engage with someone who'd assaulted me? For protecting myself? The absurdity of it would have been funny if it wasn't so infuriating. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "This is Margaret. What you're doing is despicable. Sarah is devastated. She's your wife. How dare you treat her this way?" I stared at the text for a long moment. Then I blocked the number. I didn't need to hear from Margaret Chen. I didn't need to hear from any of them. Another buzz, another unknown number. "Aaron, it's Linda, Sarah's sister. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is crazy. She made one mistake. One. And you're destroying her over it. Think about what you're doing." One mistake. That's what they were calling it. Throwing a box at my face was one mistake. 6 years of dismissive treatment, of casual cruelty, of being made to feel less than. All of that was just one mistake. I blocked that number too. Then my actual phone number called. Not a text, a voice call. "Sarah." I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe I needed to hear her voice one more time to confirm I was doing the right thing. "Aaron." She sounded wrecked, voice thick with tears. "Aaron, please. What's happening? Someone just served me with divorce papers. At our house, our home. How could you do this? You threw a jewelry box at my face, Sarah. At your birthday party. In front of everyone." I know. I was drunk. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. You know I didn't mean it. You called the gift cheap, filthy trash. You said your ex does better. I was upset. I'd had too much to drink. Aaron, you can't end our marriage over one stupid fight. It's not one fight. It's 6 years of you treating me like I'm an inconvenience, like I'm not good enough, like I'm just the guy who pays for things. That's not true. I love you. Do you? I kept my voice calm, controlled. Tell me one thing you love about me, Sarah. Not what I provide, not the house or the lifestyle or the financial security. Tell me one thing about me as a person that you actually love. Silence. Long, heavy silence. I could hear her breathing, could almost hear her mind racing, trying to think of something, anything. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "Aaron, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll change. I'll be better. Just please don't do this." "I'm taking back the house, Sarah. It's mine. It was mine before we got married. You need to find somewhere else to stay." "What? No, this is my home. It's my house, my name on the deed, my money that built it. You've been living there as my wife. You're not my wife anymore. You can't just throw me out. The court will decide that. But, Sarah, start packing." I paused. "And call your parents. I'm sure they'll be happy to have you back." "You bastard." Her voice shifted, tears replaced by venom. "You fucking bastard. After everything I've done for you, after I married you when I could have done so much better." "There it is," I said softly. "The truth. You think you settled for me. I gave you 6 years of my life. And I gave you a lifestyle you could never have afforded on your own. So I guess we're even." I felt cold, detached, like I was watching myself from outside my body. "Goodbye, Sarah. See you in court." I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking now, my heart pounding. That was it, the final conversation. The end of whatever we'd been to each other. My phone immediately rang again. Sarah calling back. I declined. It rang again. Declined. Then texts started flooding in, dozens of them, alternating between pleading and angry. Between, "I love you, please come back," and "You're going to regret this, you piece of shit." I turned off the phone completely. Tom found me sitting on the edge of the guest bed, staring at the wall. "Server got her?" he asked. "Yeah, and she called. It went about how you'd expect." "You okay?" "I don't know." I looked up at him. Is it normal to feel nothing? Like, shouldn't I feel sad? We were married for 6 years, but all I feel is tired. That's what happens when someone drains you dry. By the time you finally walk away, there's nothing left to feel. Tom sat down next to me. "You know what you need? A suit. For court this afternoon. Can't show up looking like you just rolled out of a divorce." He was right. I needed to look composed, professional, like someone who had their shit together even though my life was imploding. We drove to my storage unit, the one Sarah didn't know about, where I kept important documents and some clothes for exactly this kind of emergency. I'd always been prepared for disaster. I just never thought the disaster would be my own marriage. The suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, expensive without being flashy. I'd worn it to close deals, to impress investors, to look like the kind of man who belonged in rooms full of money. Today I'd wear it to prove I wasn't the volatile, unstable person Morrison was trying to paint me as. We stopped for lunch at a diner, but I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. In a few hours, I'd be in court. Sarah would be there. Her parents would be there. Morrison would be there, spinning his narrative about the poor, frightened wife and the controlling, abusive husband. "You look good," Tom said, nodding at my suit. "You look like money. That matters." "I am money. They just don't know it yet." "They're about to find out." He leaned back in the booth. "Aaron, real talk. When the asset disclosure hits, when they see what you're actually worth, it's going to blow up. They're going to fight for a piece of it. Let them try. California community property only applies to assets acquired during marriage. Everything I have was either premarital or kept completely separate. They can't touch it." "You hope." "I know. That's why I paid you and James so much money, to make sure everything was airtight." At 2 p.m., we arrived at the courthouse. It was a gray building, institutional and cold, the kind of place where lives got rearranged by judges who didn't know you and didn't particularly care. James was waiting outside, briefcase in hand, looking sharp in his own expensive suit. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." "Remember, calm, composed. Let Morrison talk. He'll overplay his hand. Answer questions directly and honestly. Don't get defensive. Don't get angry. You're the reasonable one." We walked into the courtroom together. Sarah was already there, sitting with Morrison at the respondent's table. She looked small, fragile, dressed in a simple black dress with minimal makeup. Her eyes were red from crying. Next to her, Morrison looked exactly like what he was. Expensive. Silver hair, $1,000 suit, the kind of polished presentation that screamed, "I win cases." Sarah's parents were in the gallery behind her. Margaret was holding Sarah's hand through the barrier. Richard was glaring at me with undisguised hatred. I sat down at the petitioner's table with James. Didn't look at Sarah, didn't acknowledge her parents. Just sat there, calm and still, waiting for the judge. Judge Patricia Reeves entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book. We all stood, then sat when she did. "We're here for emergency motions in the matter of Chen versus Bennett," she said, looking at her papers. "Mr. Morrison, you filed for a temporary restraining order against Mr. Bennett. Make your case." Morrison stood, smooth and confident. "Your Honor, my client Sarah Chen is in fear for her safety. Her husband Aaron Bennett abandoned her without warning or explanation 2 days ago. He has refused all contact, blocked her phone calls, and has now filed for divorce with demands that she be removed from the family home. This pattern of behavior suggests volatility and potential for escalation. Mrs. Chen simply wants to feel safe in her own home while this matter is adjudicated." "Mr. Chen?" Judge Reeves looked at James. "Your response?" James stood, and I noticed how he moved, slower than Morrison, more deliberate. "Your Honor, let's be clear about what actually happened. 2 nights ago at Mrs. Bennett's birthday party, she became intoxicated and assaulted Mr. Bennett. She threw a jewelry box at his face with sufficient force to break skin and cause significant bruising. This assault occurred in front of multiple witnesses, including her parents. Mr. Bennett immediately filed a police report and has photographic evidence of his injuries. He left the family home because he was the victim of domestic violence, not because he's volatile. He's seeking protection, not avoiding it." Judge Reeves's expression shifted slightly. "You have documentation of this alleged assault?" "We do, Your Honor. Police report, photographs, and witness statements if necessary." "Your Honor," Morrison interjected, "my client was intoxicated and upset. It was a minor incident blown out of proportion. Mr. Bennett is using this as a weapon to justify his controlling behavior." "Controlling behavior?" James's voice took on an edge. Mr. Bennett is protecting his premarital assets. The family home is his separate property, purchased before the marriage. Every asset he's claiming is documented as separate property with clear paper trails. There's nothing controlling about protecting what's legally yours. Judge Reeves held up a hand. Let's see this documentation. Mr. Chen, approach with the police report and photographs. James walked forward with a folder. I watched the judge's face as she examined the photos. My bruised face, the cut, the swelling. Her expression hardened. Mr. Morrison, your client threw something at her husband's face? Morrison didn't miss a beat. A moment of poor judgment while intoxicated, Your Honor. She deeply regrets it, but that doesn't give Mr. Bennett the right to throw her out of her home. It's not her home, James said firmly. It's his home. Purchased in 2017, 3 years before they met. Title in his name alone. She has no legal claim to it. That may be, Judge Reeves said, but California law provides protections for spouses in marital residences regardless of title during divorce proceedings. She looked at me directly for the first time. Mr. Bennett, why did you leave the residence? I stood, feeling all eyes on me. Your Honor, I left because I was assaulted in my own home. I left because my wife's parents laughed when it happened. I left because staying there would have been unsafe and humiliating. I've filed for divorce because the marriage is over. I'm requesting that my wife find alternative housing because that house is mine, and I have a right to feel safe in it. Do you feel your wife poses a danger to you? I think she's capable of violence when she's drunk and angry. Yes. Judge Reeves studied me for a long moment, then looked at Sarah. Mrs. Bennett, would you like to address the court? Sarah stood, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Her voice was small, trembling. Your Honor, I made a terrible mistake. I'd had too much to drink at my birthday party. I was upset about the gift, and I reacted badly. I never meant to hurt Aaron. I love him. I don't understand why he won't talk to me, why he's doing this. That house is my home. I have nowhere else to go. Your parents are in the courtroom, Judge Reeves observed. Surely you could stay with them temporarily. Sarah's mask slipped for just a second. A flash of something ugly crossed her face before she controlled it. Of course, but that house is where I live, where we built our life together. I shouldn't have to leave because of one mistake. Judge Reeves looked back at her papers, then at me, then at Sarah. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of the air conditioning and someone coughing in the gallery. Here's what I'm going to order, she said finally. No restraining order. Mrs. Bennett, you committed assault. The evidence is clear. You don't get to assault your spouse and then claim you need protection from them. However, she looked at me. Mr. Bennett, I'm not ordering your wife out of the house immediately. I'm giving her 30 days to find alternative housing. You will stay elsewhere during that time. If you can't be civil to each other during a divorce, you certainly can't cohabitate. After 30 days, if the home is indeed your separate property as you claim, you can return to it. Your Honor, James started. That's my ruling, Counselor. 30 days. Use that time to conduct discovery, take depositions, and prepare for a full hearing on asset division. She looked at both of us. And both of you, get your emotions under control. This is a divorce, not a war. Act like adults. She banged her gavel, and it was over. I walked out of the courtroom feeling like I'd won and lost simultaneously. No restraining order. That was good. But Sarah got to stay in my house for another month. Another month of her living in the space I'd built, sleeping in the bed I'd paid for, probably throwing parties and telling everyone what a monster I was. Outside the courthouse, James put a hand on my shoulder. That could have been worse. She gets my house for a month. But we established it's your house. That matters. And we blocked the restraining order, which was Morrison's main play. He wanted to paint you as dangerous so he could control the narrative. We shut that down. Sarah emerged from the courthouse with her entourage. Morrison, her parents, her sister. Margaret was talking rapidly, her face red with anger. Richard looked like he wanted to hit someone. Sarah herself looked composed again, mask back in place. She caught my eye across the courthouse steps. For a moment, we just stared at each other. 6 years of marriage, of shared space, of intimacy and resentment. reduced to this. Two strangers on opposite sides of a legal battle. Then she turned away, linking her arm through her father's, and walked toward their car. I watched them go, watch my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, disappear into the Los Angeles afternoon. "Come on," Tom said quietly. "Let's get out of here." We drove back to Manhattan Beach in silence. I was exhausted, wrung out, empty. The day had started with such momentum, such purpose. Now I just felt hollow. But it was done. The papers were filed, the battle lines were drawn. Sarah had 30 days in the house, and then it would be mine again. My space, my sanctuary. Free of her and her family and all the weight they'd brought into my life. 30 days, I could survive 30 days. I'd already survived so much more. The 30 days began like a prison sentence. Every morning I woke up in Tom's guest room knowing that Sarah was in my house, living her life like nothing had changed. James had advised me to stay away completely. No contact, no surprise visits, nothing that Morrison could spin into harassment. So I stayed away and I worked. God, did I work. The Phoenix deal closed on day 3, $2 million commission. Split with Tom. We celebrated with expensive steaks and better whiskey, and for a few hours I felt like myself again. Successful, capable, building something real. Then I went back to the guest room and lay awake thinking about Sarah sleeping in my bed. On day 5, Marcus called with an update. The account restructuring is complete. Everything with her name attached has been legally separated. She's been getting notifications. Her bank called me trying to figure out what happened. What did you tell them? That she should consult her divorce attorney. Aaron, she's realizing now the scope of it. I got a call from someone claiming to be her financial advisor. She apparently hired one this week, trying to get information about the accounts. Obviously, I told them nothing, but they're fishing. They know something big is there. They just don't know how big. Good. Let them wonder. On day 8, James called. Morrison's filed for discovery. He wants complete financial disclosure. Every account, every property, every investment, everything. Give it to him. Aaron, once we turn this over, they're going to know your net worth, your holdings, everything. And then they're going to fight like hell to claim community property interest in all of it. Let them. We have documentation proving it's all separate property. That's why we structured everything so carefully. I want them to see it, James. I want them to understand exactly what Sarah walked away from when she threw that box at my face. There was a pause. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The discovery documents went over on day 10. James hand-delivered them himself. 4 boxes of meticulously organized financial records. Bank statements, property deeds, investment portfolios, corporate structures, business contracts. Every single piece of paper proving that I'd built an empire while Sarah had been playing house. I wasn't there when Morrison opened those boxes, but I heard about it. James said the attorney's expression had been priceless. Confusion, then shock, then something like fear as he realized what he was looking at. Morrison had taken Sarah's case thinking he was dealing with a moderately successful developer in a straightforward divorce. He just discovered he was actually dealing with someone worth over $100 million, all of it documented as separate property. On day 11, my phone rang. Not Sarah's number, she'd stopped calling after I'd blocked her. Her mother's number, also blocked. This was her father again, calling from yet another new number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. You lied to us, Richard said without preamble. His voice was different now, not angry, but something else. Shaken. All this time, you let us think. You let us believe. Believe what, Richard? That I was some nobody who got lucky landing your daughter? That's what you wanted to believe. I never told you otherwise. You have over $100 million. He said it like an accusation. More, actually. The disclosure only covers domestic assets. There's offshore holdings, international properties, things that aren't relevant to a California divorce. Silence. I could hear him breathing, could almost hear his mind recalculating everything. Every dismissive comment, every condescending look, every time he treated me like I should be grateful just to be in his family. Why didn't you tell us? His voice was quieter now, almost plaintive. Would it have mattered? Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I was rich? Of course it would have mattered. Exactly. You would have treated me better because of money, not because I deserve basic respect as a human being. That's the problem, Richard. That's always been the problem. You don't value people, you value net worth. That's not fair. Isn't it? Tell me honestly, if I'd shown up 6 years ago and told you I was worth 100 million, would you have let your daughter throw a jewelry box at my face? Would you have laughed? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Sarah wants to talk, he said finally. She wants to meet, privately. No lawyers. Absolutely not. Everything goes through James now. Aaron, please, she's devastated. She had no idea. None of us did. If we'd known, if you'd known, you would have treated me like I mattered. But I shouldn't have to be wealthy to matter, Richard. I should have mattered because I was your daughter's husband, because I was a person. That's the part you still don't understand. She loves you. She loves the idea of me now that she knows I'm rich. Before that, I was just convenient. Just the guy who paid for things without asking questions. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Tell her no. Tell her it's too late. Tell her that some things, once broken, can't be fixed. I hung up. My hands were steady. I felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just tired. So deeply tired. On day 13, I had to go to the house, not inside. James had warned me against that. But I needed to retrieve some documents from my home office that weren't in storage. James came with me. Both of us dressed professionally. Everything documented with timestamps and photographs. Sarah's car was in the driveway. So was her mother's. The landscaping looked overgrown. I'd always handled that, apparently. There were wine bottles in the recycling bin visible from the street, a lot of them. We rang the doorbell. Margaret answered, her face pinched with an emotion I couldn't quite read. Not anger, something more complex. Embarrassment, maybe? Regret? Aaron, her voice was different too, softer. You look well. Mrs. Chen, I'm here to collect some documents from my office. My attorney is with me to ensure everything is documented properly. Of course, Sarah's upstairs. She doesn't know you're here. Would you like to? No, I just need the documents. She led us inside. The house looked different, messier than I'd ever seen it. Mail piled on the entry table, dishes in the sink visible from the foyer. The roses from the birthday party were dead in their vases, brown and withered, but no one had thrown them out. My office was exactly as I'd left it. At least Sarah had respected that boundary. I went straight to the file cabinet, pulled out the folders I needed, contracts from 5 years ago, original partnership agreements, business formation documents. James photographed everything, documented what I was taking. We were walking back toward the front door when Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs. She looked terrible. Not in the way she'd looked in court, carefully disheveled, artfully tragic. This was real. Her hair was unwashed, pulled back in a messy knot. She wore sweatpants and one of my old t-shirts, which somehow felt like a violation. Her face was bare of makeup, her eyes swollen from crying. Aaron, her voice cracked. Please, just 5 minutes. Just talk to me. I can't. You know I can't. Please. She came down the stairs slowly, like approaching a frightened animal. I didn't know about the money, about any of it. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed how you treated me? Yes. Of course, yes. That's the problem, Sarah. That's exactly the problem. I gripped the folders tighter. I shouldn't have to be rich for you to respect me. I shouldn't have to have a certain net worth for your family to treat me like I'm worth something. It's not about the money. It's always been about the money. That's all your family cares about. All yous care about. Status, appearance, net worth. I was never enough for you, was I? Not until you found out I was secretly wealthier than your entire family combined. Tears were running down her face now. Real tears, I thought. Maybe the first real tears she'd cried over this. I made a mistake. One terrible mistake. I was drunk and stupid, and I'm so sorry. But Aaron, we've been together for 6 years. That has to count for something. It counts. It counts as 6 years of me trying to be someone I'm not. 6 years of shrinking myself to fit into your world. 6 years of being treated like I should be grateful for the privilege of being your husband. That's not true, isn't it? When was the last time you asked me about my work? When was the last time you showed interest in what I actually do, who I actually am? When was the last time you looked at me like I was a person instead of a convenience? She opened her mouth, closed it, couldn't answer. That's what I thought. I moved toward the door. You've got 17 more days here, Sarah. Then this house goes back to being mine. Pack your things. Say goodbye to this life, because it's over. Aaron, please. But I was already walking out. James followed, closing the door firmly behind us. I didn't look back. Didn't let myself look back at Sarah standing in the foyer of my house, crying, finally understanding what she'd lost. In the car, James was quiet for a long time. Then, that was harder than you expected. Yeah, you still love her, some part of you. I love who I thought she was, who I wanted her to be, but that person never existed. I stared out the window at the passing houses, the manicured lawns, the perfect facades. The real Sarah is someone who throws gifts at her husband's face and laughs with her parents about it. That's who she actually is. People can change, maybe, but I'm not interested in finding out. Not anymore. On day 15, Morrison called James with a settlement proposal. Sarah would give up any claim to the house, to my business, to my investments. In exchange, she wanted $15 million. That's insane, I said when James told me. She has no legal claim to any of it. Morrison knows that, but he's betting you'll pay just to make this go away, to avoid a long, expensive trial, to avoid the publicity. Tell him no. Tell him I'll see him in court. Tell him I'll spend $10 million on legal fees before I give Sarah $15 million for throwing a box at my face. Aaron, no James, no settlement, no payout. She gets nothing except what California law absolutely requires, which is nothing because everything is separate property. I want to go to trial. I want a judge to hear what she did. I want it on the record. James sighed but didn't argue. He knew me well enough by now to know when I was immovable. The counteroffer went back on day 16, $0. Sarah could walk away with whatever personal property she'd brought into the marriage and whatever gifts I'd given her during it. Everything else stayed with me. Morrison called it unconscionable. James called it appropriate. I called it justice. On day 18, I got a call from Tom. Aaron, you need to come to the office. Something's happened. I drove there immediately, fear coiling in my stomach. Had something gone wrong with a project? A lawsuit? A construction accident? Tom was waiting in the conference room with our corporate attorney, Michelle Park. Both of them looked grim. What's wrong? Sarah's been making calls, Tom said, to our investors, to our partners, to people we do business with. My blood ran cold. What kind of calls? She's telling them you're abusive, that you're under investigation, that you're financially unstable, and they should be careful doing business with us. Michelle slid a folder across the table. We've gotten 3 calls today from concerned partners. One of them is threatening to pull out of the Riverside project. I sat down heavily. She's trying to destroy the business. She's trying to pressure you into a settlement, Michelle said. It's a common tactic in high net worth divorces. Attack the source of income. Make it painful enough that you'll pay to make it stop. Can we stop her? We can send cease and desist letters. We can sue for defamation if she's making false statements. But Aaron, that takes time. And in the meantime, the damage is being done. Reputation is everything in this business. I felt rage building in my chest, hot and terrible. This was low even for Sarah. Going after my work, my professional reputation, trying to poison relationships I'd spent years building. Send the cease and desist, I said quietly. Document everything, every call she makes, every lie she tells. I want it all on the record. Aaron, Tom's voice was careful. Maybe you should consider the settlement. $15 million is a lot, but if she destroys our business relationships... No, I looked at him. If I pay her now, she wins. She learns that she can assault me, treat me like garbage, and then extort money from me by threatening my livelihood. That's not happening. I don't care what it costs. This could get worse before it gets better. Then it gets worse, but I'm not backing down. Over the next week, Sarah ramped up her campaign. She posted on social media, carefully worded posts that didn't directly accuse me of anything illegal, but implied enough to raise questions. Going through a difficult time, learning things about someone you thought you knew, be careful who you trust. With photos of herself looking spite and vulnerable, the perfect victim. Her friends shared the posts, added their own commentary. Sarah deserves so much better. Some men are good at hiding who they really are. Sending love and strength to you, babe. I watched my social media fill with messages from people I barely knew. People who'd been at the birthday party, people who'd witnessed Sarah throw that box at my face and said nothing. Now they were all Team Sarah, all convinced I was some kind of monster. James advised me not to respond, not to engage. Let them talk. When this goes to trial, the truth will come out. But it was hard, watching the narrative being written without being able to defend myself. Watching my name get dragged through the mud by people who knew nothing about what had actually happened. On day 23, I got a call from my mother. We weren't particularly close. She lived in Oregon, had remarried after my father died, had her own life. But she'd seen something on social media and she was worried. "Aaron, honey, what's going on?" I saw Sarah's posts. "Are you okay?" I told her everything. The birthday party, the gift, the assault, the divorce, the battle over assets, Sarah's campaign to destroy my reputation. My mother was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then, "I never liked her." "What?" "Sarah. I never liked her. She always seemed cold to me, like she was tolerating us rather than welcoming us into her life. But you seemed happy, so I didn't say anything." "I wasn't happy. I was just pretending." "I know. I could tell. A mother knows." She sighed. "Do you need me to come down there? Do you need help?" "No, I'm okay. I'm just tired." "Of course you are. But Aaron, don't let her break you. You're stronger than this. Stronger than her. Don't forget that." After we hung up, I sat in Tom's backyard and watched the sunset over the ocean. 23 days down, 7 to go. Then I could reclaim my house, my space, my life. 7 more days of Sarah living in my home, sleeping in my bed, probably planning her next attack. 7 more days of watching her play victim while painting me as villain. 7 more days of this nightmare. But I'd survived 23. I could survive 7 more. On day 28, Marcus called with news that made everything worth it. "Aaron, you remember that offshore account, the one we set up 5 years ago for international investments?" "Yeah. Morrison just subpoenaed records for it. He's claiming it's hidden assets that you're trying to conceal community property." I smiled. And? "And I've sent over the complete documentation showing it was funded entirely with premarital assets, that Sarah's name has never been on it, that it's held in a trust established before you were married. It's untouchable." "How much is in there?" "Current value, about 40 million. Morrison had no idea it existed until he went fishing with subpoenas. Now he knows, and he knows he can't touch it." I laughed, actually laughed. "So Sarah just found out there's another 40 million she can't have?" "She found out about an hour ago, according to Morrison's frantic phone call to James. Aaron, they're panicking. They thought they had a handle on your assets. They just realized they don't. They don't even know what they don't know." Good, let them panic. On day 30, I woke up early. This was it, the last day. Tomorrow I could go home. Tomorrow Sarah would be gone and the house would be mine again. James called at noon. "She's out?" Her attorney confirmed she vacated the premises this morning. "She's staying with her parents. The house is yours." I didn't go immediately. I waited until evening, until the sun was setting and the light was golden. I wanted to see it at the right time, in the right light. I wanted the return to feel like what it was, a reclaiming, not just a homecoming. Tom drove me, stood with me in the driveway as I looked at my house, really looked at it for the first time in 30 days. "You ready?" he asked. "Yeah, I'm ready." I unlocked the door and walked inside. The house was clean, surprisingly clean. Sarah had taken her clothes, her toiletries, her personal items. The furniture was still there. Most of it had been mine anyway, but it felt different, lighter, emptier in a good way. I walked through each room slowly. The living room where we'd entertain, the dining room where she'd thrown the box at my face, the kitchen where I'd stood bleeding while her party continued without me, the bedroom where we'd slept next to each other like strangers. It all felt like a museum of a life I'd lived, already distant, already past. In my office, I found something on the desk, an envelope with my name on it in Sarah's handwriting. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won again. Inside was a letter, short, handwritten. Aaron, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive myself. I was cruel and stupid, and I threw away the best thing in my life because I couldn't see what I had until it was gone. You deserve better than me. You always did. I hope someday you find someone who treats you the way you should have been treated. I hope you're happy. I'm sorry. So I read it twice, then I folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and filed it away in a drawer, not because I was saving it, but because someday, if I ever doubted my decision, I could read it and remember. She only understood my value after she'd lost me. I walked out onto the back patio, looked at the view of the city lights spreading out below, and I breathed. Deep, full, free. Tom found me there. You good? Yeah, I said. Yeah, I'm good. What now? Now, Mo? I smiled. Now I build something better. The house felt different at night, quieter. Mine in a way it had never been when Sarah lived here. I spent the first night back walking through rooms, opening windows, letting the place breathe. There were ghosts here, memories of arguments, of silent dinners, of nights sleeping back to back in a king-size bed that might as well have been an ocean. But they were just ghosts. They couldn't hurt me anymore. I slept in the guest room that first night, couldn't bring myself to use the master bedroom yet. That felt like Sarah's territory still, contaminated by her presence. In the morning, I'd call a service to replace everything. New mattress, new sheets, new furniture if necessary. I'd burn it all down and start over. At 6 a.m., my phone rang. James, early as always. Morrison's requesting a settlement conference. He wants to meet before the trial date. What changed his mind? Reality? He's done the math. He knows Sarah has no claim to your assets. He knows the assault is documented. He knows she's been making false statements to your business associates, which opens her up to defamation liability. He's trying to minimize the damage. What's he offering now? $5 million. He says it's fair compensation for 6 years of marriage. I laughed, bitter and sharp. Fair compensation? Like being my wife was a job? That's essentially what he's arguing, that Sarah contributed to your success through her support, her social connections, her role as your spouse. Her social connections? Her parents who treated me like garbage? Her friends who recorded me getting assaulted and posted it online? I felt anger rising, hot and familiar. Tell him no. Tell him we're going to trial. Aaron, listen, I'm advising you as your attorney, take the settlement conference, not because I think you should settle, but because it looks good for the judge. Shows you're trying to be reasonable. Shows you're willing to negotiate in good faith. I'm not willing to negotiate. I know, but the judge doesn't need to know that until we're in the conference. Trust me on this. So 2 days later, I found myself in a conference room at Morrison's firm. Sleek, modern, the kind of place designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Expensive art on the walls. A table that probably cost more than most people's cars. Sarah was already there when I arrived. She looked better than she had at the house. Hairstyled, makeup done, wearing a cream-colored dress that made her look young and innocent. Her armor. Her costume for playing the wronged wife. She met my eyes when I walked in. I saw her flinch, just slightly. Good. She should flinch. She should feel uncomfortable. She should understand, on some level, what she'd done. Morrison was there, of course, and 2 associates, both young and sharp-looking. Sarah's parents sat in chairs against the wall, observers, not participants, but their presence was a statement. We're here. We're watching. We won't let you destroy our daughter. James and I sat across from them. The mediator, a retired family court judge named Harold Winters, sat at the head of the table looking tired before we'd even started. "Thank you all for coming," Winters began. "We're here to see if we can reach a settlement agreement that avoids the expense and stress of a trial. Mr. Morrison, would you like to present your client's position?" Morrison stood, smooth and practiced. "Your Honor, my client Sarah Bennett entered this marriage in good faith. She supported her husband's career, maintained their home, fulfilled all the duties of a spouse. The marriage lasted 6 years. During that time, Mr. Bennett accumulated significant wealth that, my client has discovered, he deliberately hid from her throughout the marriage." "Objection," James said calmly. "Mr. Bennett didn't hide assets. He maintained separate property, which is his legal right. Mrs. Bennett never asked about his finances and showed no interest in them." Morrison continued as if James hadn't spoken. "Mrs. Bennett had no idea of the scope of her husband's wealth until discovery in this case. She believed they were comfortable but not wealthy. She lived modestly relative to what she now knows they could have afforded. This deliberate obscuring of assets constitutes financial abuse." I felt my jaw clench. Financial abuse. Because I'd kept my premarital assets separate, because I'd protected what was mine, I was now abusive. Furthermore, Morrison said, the incident Mr. Bennett characterizes as assault was a momentary lapse in judgment during a stressful event. Mrs. Bennett had consumed alcohol, was upset about her husband's inappropriate gift. "Inappropriate gift?" James interrupted. "A $45,000 vintage Cartier bracelet is inappropriate?" "It was inappropriate for the occasion," Morrison said smoothly. "Mrs. Bennett's family has traditions about birthday celebrations. The gift violated those traditions. She reacted emotionally. She immediately regretted her actions. To characterize this as assault requiring police intervention is a gross exaggeration designed to paint Mrs. Bennett as unstable." I couldn't stay quiet anymore. She threw a box at my face. It drew blood. Her parents laughed. "Mr. Bennett," Winter said gently, "please let the attorneys speak." But Morrison had turned to look at me, his expression pitying. "Mr. Bennett, I understand you're hurt. Divorce is painful. But trying to punish your wife by taking everything, by leaving her with nothing after 6 years of marriage, that's cruel, that's vindictive. Surely you can see that's not who you want to be." "Cruel?" I stood up, ignoring James's hand on my arm. "You want to talk about cruel? Let me tell you what cruel is. Cruel is spending 6 years making someone feel like they're not good enough. Cruel is comparing your husband to your ex at your birthday party. Cruel is having your parents join in on humiliating him. Cruel is throwing a gift in his face because it doesn't meet your standards. Cruel is launching a campaign to destroy his professional reputation when he won't pay you extortion money." "Aaron," James said quietly, "sit down." I sat, but I wasn't done. I kept my assets separate because I worked for them, because I built them before Sarah was in my life, because some part of me knew, always knew, that she didn't value me. She valued what I could provide. And now that she knows exactly how much that is, suddenly she loves me. Suddenly she's devastated. That's not love. That's greed. Sarah was crying now, tears running down her carefully made-up face. "That's not true," she whispered. "Aaron, that's not true. I did love you. I do love you." "Then why did you throw the bracelet at my face, Sarah? If you loved me, why did that happen?" She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Morrison for help. "My client made a mistake," Morrison said. "One mistake in 6 years. Surely that's forgivable." "It's not one mistake," I said, my voice cold now, controlled. "It's the culmination of 6 years of contempt. 6 years of being treated like I was lucky to be there. 6 years of her family looking down on me while I paid for everything. The birthday party was just the moment I finally saw it clearly." Winters held up his hands. "Let's take a break. Everyone step out, clear your heads. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes. James and I went to an empty conference room down the hall. He closed the door and looked at me with an expression that was part exasperation, part respect. "You're not making this easy." "I'm not trying to make it easy. I'm trying to make it honest. Honest doesn't win in family court. Strategy wins. Patience wins. Letting Morrison talk himself into corners wins. He paced to the window. But I'll admit, you landed some hits. The bit about the parents laughing? Winters noticed that. He's wondering what kind of family dynamic we're dealing with here. A toxic one. Yes, but we need to be careful. You're coming across as angry, justified anger, but anger nonetheless. We need you to seem hurt, but reasonable. Wounded, but willing to be fair. I am being fair. I'm taking what's mine and leaving what's hers. That's perfectly fair. James studied me for a moment. What did you really come here for today, Aaron? What do you want out of this conference? I thought about that. What did I want? I want her to admit it, that she never valued me, that she only cares now because of the money. I want her to say it out loud, in front of her parents, in front of everyone. That's not going to happen. I know. I felt suddenly exhausted, but I had to try. When we reconvened, Morrison had a new strategy. He put Sarah on the stand, not literally, but effectively. He had her tell her story. Sarah, he said gently, tell us about your marriage. What was it like? She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Her voice was soft, trembling. It was wonderful at first. Aaron was attentive, romantic. He made me feel special. We had this beautiful house, this beautiful life. I thought we were building something together. When did things change? Gradually. He started working more, being home less. When he was home, he was distant, distracted. I felt like I was losing him, but I didn't know how to reach him. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I tried, Aaron. I really tried. It was a good performance, almost believable. If I didn't know better, if I hadn't lived through the reality, I might have believed it myself. And the birthday party, Morrison prompted. I was frustrated. I'd been feeling neglected for months. The gift, it felt thoughtless, like he'd just grabbed something expensive without thinking about what I'd actually want. It felt like a symbol of everything wrong between us, him throwing money at the problem instead of actually connecting with me. Her voice broke. I reacted badly. I know that. I've apologized. But Aaron, I was hurt. You have to understand, I was hurt. So you threw a jewelry box at his face? James asked mildly. That's how you express hurt? Morrison glared at him. Mr. Chen, no, it's a fair question, James continued. Mrs. Bennett, you felt hurt, so you committed an act of violence. Then your parents laughed. Then you sat back down and continued enjoying your party while your husband bled. Is that an accurate characterization of events? Sarah's mask slipped. For just a second, I saw anger flash across her face. Then she controlled it, forced the tears back. It wasn't like that. You're twisting it. I'm stating facts. Facts that are documented in a police report with photographic evidence. Facts without context, Morrison interjected. Your Honor, Mr. Chen is trying to paint my client as some kind of monster. But the truth is, this is a marriage that deteriorated over time. Both parties share responsibility. The question before us is how to fairly dissolve the partnership. There is no partnership to dissolve, James said. Mr. Bennett's assets are separate property. Mrs. Bennett has no legal claim to them. This entire conference is based on the premise that she deserves compensation for being married, which is absurd. She's not entitled to a payout just because the marriage ended. She's entitled to fair consideration after 6 years. 6 years of living in a house she didn't pay for, driving cars she didn't purchase, enjoying a lifestyle she didn't earn. She's been compensated, quite generously. Morrison's face was reddening. Your Honor, this is exactly the kind of vindictive attitude. Gentlemen, Winters raised his voice slightly. Let's refocus. Mr. Morrison, what specifically is your client requesting? $5 million, plus the furniture and personal property from the marital residence, plus spousal support of $20,000 per month for 5 years. I almost laughed. Almost. $5 million, furniture, and $120,000 a year for throwing a box at my face. Counteroffer, James said calmly. Mrs. Bennett receives any personal property she brought into the marriage and any gifts given to her during the marriage. No cash settlement, no spousal support. She's young, healthy, and capable of supporting herself. That's outrageous. It's appropriate. Mrs. Bennett has a college degree. She has no disabilities preventing her from working. She's lived rent-free for 6 years, which has allowed her to save any earnings she had. She's perfectly capable of supporting herself going forward. Sarah was crying harder now. Real tears this time, I thought. Not because she loved me, but because she was realizing she wasn't going to get the payout she'd expected. Her parents were whispering furiously to each other. Margaret looked like she wanted to leap across the table and strangle James. "Mr. Bennett," Winter said, addressing me directly, "do you have anything to say? Any offer you'd like to make?" I looked at Sarah, really looked at her. 6 years of my life, 6 years of trying to make her happy, trying to earn her family's approval, trying to be enough. 6 years of slowly losing myself. "I'll give her $2 million, I said quietly. "On one condition." Everyone went silent. Morrison leaned forward. James looked at me sharply. This wasn't what we'd discussed. "What condition?" Sarah asked, her voice small. "That you admit the truth, right here, right now, that you never loved me, that you loved what I could provide, that if I'd been poor, you never would have married me." Sarah's face went pale. Her mother gasped. Morrison started to object, but I held up my hand. $2 million, Sarah, tax-free. All you have to do is tell the truth for once in your life." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. I could see her mind working, calculating. $2 million was more than she'd leave with if we went to trial. But admitting what I was asking, that would destroy the narrative, the victim story she'd been building. She started, stopped, looked at her parents, at Morrison, back at me. "I can't or won't. It's not true. What you're saying isn't true. I did love you. I do." "Then no deal." I stood up. "We're done here, James. Let's go." "Mr. Bennett, wait," Morrison started, but I was already walking out. James scrambled to gather his papers and follow me. Behind us, I could hear Sarah crying, Morrison trying to calm everyone down, Winters calling for order. In the elevator, James looked at me with something like awe. That was either brilliant or insane. I'm not sure which. Does it matter? Probably not, but Aaron, $2 million? Where did that come from? A moment of weakness? Or maybe strength? I'm not sure. I rubbed my face. I wanted to give her a chance. One chance to be honest. She couldn't do it. So we go to trial. We go to trial. The elevator doors opened onto the parking garage. We walked to my truck in silence. I felt strange, lighter somehow, despite everything. I'd offered her a way out, a generous way out, and she'd refused it. Not because the money wasn't enough, but because the truth was too expensive. That told me everything I needed to know. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. That was cruel, making her admit something like that in front of everyone. "You've changed, Aaron. You're not the man I married." "Sarah," I showed it to James. He shook his head. "Block it. Don't respond. Let her stew." But I couldn't help myself. I typed back, "You're right. I'm not the man you married." That man was too afraid to stand up for himself, too desperate to be loved, too willing to accept scraps. I'm someone better now, someone who knows his worth. You did that, Sarah. You made me strong enough to walk away. So thank you. I hit send, then blocked the number. James was right about one thing. I had changed. The man who'd stood in that dining room with blood running down his face, that man was gone. In his place was someone harder, colder, but also more honest. Someone who wouldn't accept being treated as less than he was. We drove back to my house, finally mine again. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a moment, looking at the building I'd designed, the life I'd built. "You know what the worst part is?" I said to James. "I would have given her everything. If she just loved me, actually loved me, I would have shared it all, built something real together. But she wanted the money without the work, the lifestyle without the partnership. And when I finally called her on it, she couldn't even admit what she was." "Some people can't face their own truth," James said. "It's too painful." "Yeah, well, her pain, her problem, I'm done carrying it." That night, I started the process of reclaiming my house. I hired an interior designer, not one Sarah would approve of, one I liked. I told her to make the place feel like mine. Modern, clean, minimal. None of Sarah's Baroque touches, her need for everything to look expensive and impressive. I wanted it to feel like home. I ordered new furniture for the master bedroom, donated the old stuff, let someone else have the bed Sarah had slept in. I couldn't burn it, but I could let it go. Let all of it go. Tom came over with takeout and beer. We sat on the back patio looking at the city lights, and he asked the question I knew was coming. Do you regret it? Offering her the $2 million? No, I needed to know if she would choose honesty over money, if some part of her was real. And now you know. Now I know. I took a drink of beer. She couldn't do it, couldn't admit the truth even for $2 million, because admitting it would mean facing who she really is. And she'd rather keep lying to herself than accept that reality. What happens at trial? We win. We present the evidence. The assault, the separate property documentation, her campaign against my business. The judge rules in my favor. She walks away with nothing but what she came in with. And then I build something better. I looked at my house, my beautiful house that was finally mine again. I already am. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the city breathe below us. Tomorrow I'd get back to work. Tomorrow I'd keep building my empire, my life, my future. Tomorrow I'd keep moving forward. But tonight I let myself feel it. The victory of walking away, the freedom of saying no, the power of knowing my own worth. Sarah had thrown a bracelet at my face and called it trash. I'd taken back my entire life and called it justice. The trial date arrived 6 weeks later on a gray Tuesday morning that felt appropriate for what was coming. I'd barely slept the night before, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. This was it, the moment when everything would be laid bare, when the truth would be spoken in a room where lies couldn't hide. James met me at the courthouse steps at 8 a.m. He looked sharp in a charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase that probably weighed 30 pounds with all the documentation inside. Behind him were 2 associates wheeling filing boxes, 6 years of financial records, business documents, emails, text messages, everything that proved my case. Ready? He asked. I've been ready for weeks. Inside, the courthouse was busy with the machinery of justice, lawyers rushing between courtrooms, families huddled on benches, the low hum of dozens of lives being legally rearranged. We made our way to courtroom 304, where Judge Patricia Reeves would preside, the same judge from the emergency hearing. That felt like a good sign. Sarah was already there when we entered. She sat at the respondents' table with Morrison and his team, looking small and fragile in a navy dress that probably cost a fortune, but was designed to look modest. Her hair was pulled back simply, minimal jewelry, just her wedding ring, which felt like a calculated move. Look at me, still wearing the symbol of our marriage while he tears it apart. Her parents sat in the first row of the gallery. Margaret's face was pinched and angry. Richard looked older than I remembered, gray and tired. Behind them sat Sarah's sister Linda, a few cousins I recognized from the birthday party, and some friends I'd never particularly liked. On my side of the gallery sat Tom and Maria, Marcus Webb, and surprisingly my mother. She'd flown down from Oregon without telling me, just showed up at my house yesterday saying she wouldn't miss this for anything. Seeing her there, her presence solid and supportive, made something in my chest loosen. Judge Reeves entered, and we all stood. She settled into her chair, surveyed the courtroom with those sharp eyes, and said, "Be seated. We're here for the dissolution of marriage between Aaron Michael Bennett and Sarah Marie Chen. This is a bench trial. I'll be deciding the issues of asset division and spousal support. Mr. Morrison, you may present your opening statement." Morrison stood, buttoning his suit jacket, and launched into his narrative. "Your Honor, this is a case about a woman who gave 6 years of her life to a marriage, only to discover that her husband had been lying to her the entire time. Aaron Bennett presented himself as a moderately successful developer. He allowed Sarah to believe they were comfortable but not wealthy. Meanwhile, he was hiding assets worth over $100 million. When Sarah discovered this deception, when she reacted emotionally to this betrayal, Mr. Bennett used that single moment of poor judgment to justify taking everything and leaving her with nothing. This is not justice. This is revenge. He spoke for 10 minutes, painting Sarah as a victim of financial abuse, of emotional manipulation, of a controlling husband who deliberately kept her in the dark about their true financial situation. He made it sound almost believable if you ignored all the facts. Then it was James's turn. Your Honor, this case is actually quite simple. Aaron Bennett built a fortune before he met Sarah Chen. He maintained that fortune as separate property throughout their marriage, which is his legal right under California law. When Mrs. Bennett assaulted him at her birthday party, and make no mistake, throwing an object at someone's face causing injury is assault, Mr. Bennett chose to end the marriage. Mrs. Bennett now wants to be compensated for losing access to wealth that was never hers to begin with. The law is clear. Separate property remains separate. Mrs. Bennett is entitled to exactly nothing from Mr. Bennett's premarital and separate property holdings. Judge Reeves made a note, then looked up. Morrison, call your first witness. The respondent calls Sarah Marie Bennett to the stand. Sarah stood and walked to the witness box. She was sworn in, her voice soft and steady. Morrison began his direct examination with gentle questions. Background, how we met, the early days of our relationship. Mrs. Bennett, when you married Aaron, what did you understand about his financial situation? I thought he was doing well. He had a nice house, drove a nice truck. He never seemed worried about money. But I didn't think we were wealthy. He never told me we were wealthy. Did you ask about his finances? No, I trusted him. I thought we were partners, that he'd tell me if there was something I should know. I never imagined he was hiding over $100 million from me. How did that make you feel when you discovered the truth? Betrayed, like our entire marriage had been a lie. Like he'd been testing me somehow, seeing if I'd love him, even if I thought he was just ordinary. Her voice cracked. I did love him. I loved who I thought he was. And then I found out he'd been someone else the entire time. Morrison nodded sympathetically. Let's talk about the birthday party. Tell us what happened. Sarah took a breath, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. It was my 32nd birthday. Aaron had been distant for weeks. I was trying to have a nice celebration with my family. When it came time for gifts, Aaron gave me this bracelet. And I know it sounds terrible, but it felt wrong. It felt impersonal, like something he just bought because it was expensive, not because it meant anything. What did you do? I got upset. I'd been drinking. I'd had several glasses of champagne. My emotions were high. I said some things I shouldn't have said. And then she paused, looking genuinely ashamed. I threw the box. I didn't mean to hit him. I was just so frustrated, so hurt. I wanted him to feel something, anything. I wanted a reaction. Did you intend to injure him? God, no, never. When I saw his face bleeding, I was horrified. But before I could apologize, before I could do anything, he just left, walked out without a word, and I haven't spoken to him since, except through attorneys. It was a good story, a really good story. She'd managed to make herself the victim even while admitting to assault. The hurt wife, driven to a momentary outburst by her husband's emotional distance and deception. Your witness, Morrison said, sitting down. James stood slowly, gathering his papers. He approached Sarah with the calm deliberation of a surgeon preparing to operate. Mrs. Bennett, you say you loved your husband. Is that correct? Yes. When was the last time you told him that before the birthday party? Sarah blinked. I don't remember exactly. 1 week before, 1 month, 6 months. I don't keep track of every time I say I love you. Fair enough. Let me ask differently. When was the last time you asked your husband about his day, about his work, about what he was thinking or feeling? I asked all the time. Really? Because we have text message records showing that in the 6 months before your birthday party, you sent your husband 473 text messages. Of those, 412 were requests or demands. Pick up dry cleaning. Transfer money to my account. We need to go to my parents' house. Only 61 were conversational, and of those 61, only 3 included questions about his well-being. James held up a document. 3 times in 6 months you asked how he was doing. Does that sound like love to you? Sarah's face flushed. That's not fair. Text messages don't represent. You're right. Let's talk about actions. In the year before your birthday party, how many times did you attend a work event with your husband? A client dinner? A business function where he needed support? I don't know. Several times. The actual number is 0. He attended 17 events with you, your friends' parties, your family gatherings, your charity galas. You attended 0 of his. James paused. Does that sound like partnership to you? I didn't know they were important to him. He asked you to come. We have emails. You declined every time, saying they would be boring or that you had other plans. Morrison stood. Objection, Your Honor. This is argumentative and not relevant to asset division. It's relevant to Mrs. Bennett's claim that she was a supportive spouse who contributed to his success, James countered. If she wants to claim she deserves compensation for her role in the marriage, we get to examine what that role actually was. Judge Reeves considered. I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Chen. James turned back to Sarah. Let's talk about the birthday party. You said the bracelet felt impersonal. Do you know what that bracelet was? Some old Cartier piece. It was a 1952 vintage Cartier bracelet that belonged to a French actress named Simone Mercier. Your husband spent 6 months tracking it down because he knew you loved old Hollywood glamour. He worked with 3 different estate dealers and had it authenticated twice. It cost $45,000. Does that sound impersonal? Sarah's mouth opened slightly. I didn't know. No, you didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't want to know. You just decided it was inadequate and threw it at his face. James's voice hardened. Tell me, Mrs. Bennett, when you threw that box, where were you aiming? I wasn't aiming. Were you aiming at his body, his chest, or were you aiming at his face? I told you, I wasn't trying to hit him at all. The box struck him directly in the face. Are you saying that was an accident? That your aim was that poor? I was drunk. Drunk enough to throw objects at people's faces, but not drunk enough to remember exactly what you said? James walked back to his table and picked up another document. Let's refresh your memory. You said, and I quote, cheap, filthy trash. My ex does better than this. Do you remember saying that? Sarah was silent. Mrs. Bennett, do you remember comparing your husband unfavorably to Brandon Reynolds, your ex-boyfriend, at your birthday party in front of everyone? I was upset. Yes, you've established that. You were upset, so you insulted your husband and assaulted him. Then what did you do? What do you mean? After the box hit his face and he was bleeding, what did you do? Sarah looked at her lap. I sat back down. You sat back down, you didn't apologize. You didn't check if he was okay. You didn't ask someone to help him. You sat back down and continued your party. Is that correct? Yes. Her voice was barely a whisper. And your parents? What did they do when you assaulted your husband? Objection, Morrison called. The parents aren't on trial here. Your Honor, Mrs. Bennett's family dynamics are relevant to understanding the environment of the marriage, James argued. Overruled. Answer the question, Mrs. Bennett. Sarah lifted her head. My mother laughed. Just a little. She didn't mean anything by it. She laughed when her son-in-law was bleeding from an injury her daughter caused. And your father? He raised his glass like a toast. The courtroom was silent. I watched Judge Reeves's expression shift, saw something cold settle in her eyes. So to be clear, James said, you assaulted your husband, your mother laughed, your father toasted it, and then you all continued celebrating while he left bleeding. Do I have that right? When you say it like that, is there another way to say it? Another interpretation of those facts? Sarah had no answer. James went on for another 40 minutes, methodically dismantling every claim Sarah had made. He showed emails where she demanded money transfers without explanation, text messages where she mocked my work to her friends, photos from her social media showing expensive purchases, a $10,000 handbag, a $15,000 watch, all bought with money from my accounts, while she claimed she thought we weren't wealthy. By the time he finished, Sarah looked defeated, small, nothing like the confident woman who'd stood to testify an hour ago. No further questions, James said. Morrison did his best on redirect, trying to rehabilitate Sarah's testimony. But the damage was done. The truth was out there now, documented and undeniable. Next, Morrison called Richard Chen to the stand. Sarah's father looked uncomfortable as he was sworn in, his usual arrogance replaced by something more uncertain. Morrison kept his questions safe. Richard testified about his daughter's character, her role as a wife, her contributions to the marriage. But on cross-examination, James went straight for the throat. Mr. Chen, what do you do for a living? I'm retired. I was an investment banker. And your net worth? Objection, relevance? Morrison stood. Your Honor, Mr. Chen has been vocal about his son-in-law's finances. I think it's fair to examine his own. Overruled. Answer the question, Mr. Chen. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Approximately $8 million. $8 million. And you considered Aaron Bennett to be, what, beneath your family? I never said that. No, let me refresh your memory. James pulled out a document. This is a text message you sent to your wife 1 month after your daughter's wedding. Sarah could have done better. At least he has money for now. Did you write that? Richard's face went red. That was taken out of context. What context makes that acceptable? Your daughter had just married a man and you were already dismissing him. I was protecting my daughter. From what? A man who loved her? A man who spent 6 months finding the perfect birthday gift? A man who paid for your family's lifestyle without complaint? James's voice was sharp now. Or were you just disappointed that she didn't marry someone from your social class? That's not... Let me ask you this, Mr. Chen. When you discovered that Aaron Bennett was worth over $100 million, did your opinion of him change? Silence. Long, damning silence. Mr. Chen? Of course it changed. We realized we'd misjudged. So you admit it. You judge people based on their net worth. And when you thought Aaron was merely comfortable, you looked down on him. Correct? That's not what I meant, but it's what you did. And at your daughter's birthday party, when she assaulted her husband, you raised your glass, like you were celebrating. Richard looked at his daughter, then at Morrison, then back at James. I don't remember doing that. You don't remember? James pulled out another document. We have 3 witnesses who saw you. Would you like me to call them to the stand? No, Richard's voice was defeated. I thought it was funny, in the moment. I didn't realize how serious it was. You thought your daughter assaulting her husband was funny. I was drunk, we all were. That seems to be a recurring theme in this family. James turned away. No further questions. The trial continued through the afternoon. Morrison called Sarah's friends to testify about her character, but James's cross-examinations revealed that none of them actually knew anything about our marriage. They knew Sarah's version, the story she'd told them. They didn't know about the contempt, the dismissiveness, the years of being made to feel less than. On the second day, James called me to the stand. I'd been waiting for this, preparing for it. This was my chance to tell the truth in my own words. James walked me through our relationship, how we met, the early days when things started to change. I told the truth, all of it. The distance, the dismissive comments, the feeling of never being enough, the birthday party. Mr. Bennett, James asked, why did you keep your assets separate from your wife? 2 reasons. First, they were mine before I met her, separate property under California law. Second, I paused, choosing my words carefully, because some part of me always knew she didn't value me. She valued what I could provide. I kept my finances separate as protection, in case the day came when she showed me who she really was. And that day came at the birthday party. Yes, Morrison's cross-examination was aggressive. He tried to paint me as controlling, as deliberately deceiving Sarah about our finances. But I had an answer for everything because I'd been honest from the beginning, with myself, if not with Sarah. Mr. Bennett, don't you think you owed your wife honesty about your wealth? Did she ever ask? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. In 6 years, Sarah never once asked me about my business, my holdings, my plans. She wasn't interested. She only became interested when she realized she was losing access to it. You're saying this is her fault? I'm saying we're both responsible for the marriage failing, but I'm not responsible for her assault. I'm not responsible for her family's contempt. And I'm not obligated to pay her millions of dollars because she's upset the gravy train is ending. Morrison tried for another hour, but he couldn't shake me. The facts were the facts. The documentation was the documentation. No amount of spin could change reality. On the third day, James presented our financial evidence. Documents proving every asset was separate property, bank records showing clear separation of funds, business formation papers predating the marriage. It was airtight, bulletproof, exactly what we'd spent years making sure it would be. Judge Reeves reviewed it all with careful attention. She asked questions, requested clarifications, made notes. By the end of the day, I could see on her face that she understood. This wasn't a case of hidden assets or financial abuse. This was a case of a man protecting what was his from a woman who felt entitled to it. On the fourth day, both sides gave closing arguments. Morrison made an emotional appeal about fairness, about Sarah's contributions, about the sanctity of marriage. James made a legal argument about separate property, about California law, about what the evidence actually showed. Then Judge Reeves said she'd take the matter under submission and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. We walked out of the courthouse into bright sunlight. I felt drained, exhausted, but also strangely light. It was done. The truth was on record. Now we just had to wait. James put a hand on my shoulder. You did well in there. How do you think it'll go? Honestly, I think we won. The evidence is overwhelming, but you never know with judges. They have wide discretion in these cases. Tom, Maria, and my mother were waiting on the courthouse steps. My mother hugged me tightly, not saying anything, just holding on. Sometimes that's all you need. Whatever happens, she said finally, I'm proud of you, for standing up for yourself, for not backing down. Thanks, Mom. We went to dinner that night, all of us together. We didn't talk about the trial, we talked about other things. Tom's daughters, Maria's work, my mother's new hobby of woodworking. Normal things, life things. Reminders that the world was bigger than this divorce, bigger than Sarah and her family and their contempt. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah on the stand. The way she'd looked when James confronted her with the text messages, the evidence of her indifference. For a moment, just a moment, I'd seen something in her face, not sadness at losing me, sadness at being caught, at having her true nature exposed. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until the judge decided if justice would be served. 2 weeks until I knew if standing up for myself had been worth it. I already knew the answer, but it would be nice if the law agreed. The call came on a Wednesday morning, exactly 13 days after closing arguments. I was at the office reviewing plans for a new development in San Diego when my phone buzzed. James's name on the screen. We have a ruling, he said without preamble. Judge Reeves issued her decision an hour ago. Can you get to my office? My heart hammered against my ribs. What did she say? In person, Aaron. This isn't a phone conversation. The drive to Century City felt endless. Traffic that would normally irritate me barely registered. My mind was spinning through possibilities, through scenarios. Judge Reeves had seemed sympathetic during the trial, but Morrison was skilled at last-minute appeals to emotion. What if she decided that 6 years of marriage deserved something? Documentation be damned. What if she'd split the difference, given Sarah a few million just to make it go away? James's assistant waved me through immediately when I arrived. He was at his desk, the court ruling printed out in front of him. 37 pages of legal reasoning that would determine my future. Sit down, he said, and something in his expression made my chest tighten. I sat. Judge Reeves ruled in your favor, completely, total vindication. The relief hit me like a physical force. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Everything? Everything. She found that all assets you claimed as separate property are indeed separate property. She noted the extensive documentation, the clear paper trails, the fact that you maintain separate finances throughout the marriage. Sarah gets nothing except her personal property and gifts you gave her during the marriage, which ironically includes that Cartier bracelet if she still has it. What about spousal support? Denied. Judge Reeves found that Sarah is young, educated, and capable of supporting herself. She noted, and I'm reading directly from the ruling here, the respondent presented herself as a supportive spouse, but the evidence shows a pattern of emotional distance and financial dependency. The petitioner fulfilled all obligations of the marriage, while the respondent contributed primarily through her presence, which is insufficient grounds for ongoing support. I felt something loosen in my chest. She saw it. She actually saw what the marriage was. She saw more than that. James flipped to another page. She addressed the assault directly. This court finds that the respondent's actions at the birthday party constitute domestic violence. The throwing of an object at the petitioner's face with sufficient force to cause injury, followed by the respondent's family's mocking response, demonstrates a hostile environment that the petitioner was justified in leaving. The respondent's claim that this was a single mistake is undermined by the pattern of contemptuous behavior documented throughout these proceedings. Contemptuous behavior, I repeated softly. That was exactly what it had been. 6 years of contempt, culminating in that one violent moment. There's more. James's expression shifted slightly. She ordered Sarah to pay your legal fees. All of them. What? Your attorney's fees, your expert witness costs, everything. The ruling states the respondent's refusal to acknowledge the clear legal reality of the petitioner's separate property necessitated this litigation. The respondent pursued claims she knew or should have known were without merit, requiring the petitioner to incur substantial legal expenses to defend his rightful property. This court finds such conduct warrants a fee award. I sat back in the chair, almost dizzy. Not only had I won everything, Sarah had to pay for the privilege of losing. The legal fees alone were probably close to $200,000. How will she pay that? She doesn't have that kind of money. Not your problem. The court will work out a payment plan, or her parents will pay it, or she'll declare bankruptcy. But Aaron, this is total victory. Everything you wanted and more. I should have felt triumphant, vindicated, powerful. Instead, I just felt tired. When does this take effect? Immediately, the marriage is dissolved as of today. All property is confirmed as separate and returned to your sole ownership. Sarah has 30 days to collect any remaining personal items from the residence, supervised by a neutral third party. After that, she has no legal right to enter the property. And the business stuff? Her calls to my clients? Judge Reeves addressed that too. She issued a permanent injunction preventing Sarah from making any statements about you or your business affairs. If she violates it, she'll be held in contempt of court. James closed the folder. It's over, Aaron. You won. I drove home slowly, taking side streets, avoiding the highway. I needed time to process what had just happened. 6 months ago, I'd been standing in my dining room with blood on my face, being laughed at by people who thought I was nothing. Now a judge had declared in 37 pages of legal reasoning that I'd been right, that my perception of reality matched actual reality, that I wasn't crazy or oversensitive or vindictive. I was just someone who'd been treated badly and had finally said enough. The house was quiet when I arrived. I stood in the driveway for a moment, looking at it with different eyes. This wasn't the museum of a failed marriage anymore. It was mine. Legally, officially, permanently mine. Sarah had no claim to it, no right to it, no future in it. My phone rang. James called me. Congratulations, man. Total victory. Yeah. You don't sound happy. I am, I think. I don't know what I expected to feel. This isn't it. What did you expect? Something bigger, more satisfying, I guess. Instead, I just feel empty. Tom was quiet for a moment. That's because revenge doesn't actually fill anything, Aaron. It just removes the poison. Now you have to figure out what to fill the space with. He was right, of course. I'd spent 6 months focused on this outcome, on winning, on proving my point. I'd won. The court had agreed with me. Sarah's attempt to take what wasn't hers had failed spectacularly, but none of that erased the 6 years I'd lost. None of it gave me back the time I'd wasted on someone who didn't value me. What do I do now? I asked. You live, man. You build. You find someone who actually deserves you. You remember that this ending was necessary for whatever comes next. After we hung up, I walked through the house room by room. The designer I'd hired had done good work. The spaces looked different now, felt different. Less like a showpiece, more like a home. My bedroom had new furniture, a king-size bed with simple, clean lines. The walls were a soft gray instead of Sarah's preferred stark white. Small changes, but they mattered. In my office, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. There was an email from James with the full court ruling attached. I read through it slowly, carefully, letting each word sink in. Judge Reeves hadn't just ruled on the law. She'd ruled on the truth of what happened. She'd seen through Sarah's performance, her tears, her claims of being the wrong party. The ruling was, in its own way, a vindication not just of my financial position, but of my entire experience of the marriage. The evidence presented shows a relationship characterized by emotional distance and financial opportunism rather than genuine partnership, she'd written. The respondent's claim that she loved the petitioner is undermined by her actions both during the marriage and during these proceedings. Love is demonstrated through support, interest, and respect, none of which the respondent consistently showed. I read that paragraph 3 times. A judge, a stranger who'd spent 4 days hearing testimony, had seen what Sarah's own parents couldn't or wouldn't see, that their daughter hadn't loved me, that the marriage had been a transaction dressed up as a relationship. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I hope you're happy. You destroyed me. You took everything. I hope it was worth it. Sarah, still unable to take responsibility, still casting herself as the victim. I stared at the text for a long moment, then blocked the number without responding. She'd had every opportunity to acknowledge her part in this, to show even a shred of genuine remorse. She'd chosen pride instead. That was her burden to carry now, not mine. Another text, different number. Margaret this time. You're a vindictive, cruel man. My daughter deserved better than you. She always did. I blocked that one too. Then Richard. The judgment is a travesty. We'll appeal. This isn't over. Block, Linda. I hope you're satisfied you've ruined Sarah's life. Block. They would never understand, never accept that their daughter, their sister, had created this situation through her own actions. It would always be my fault in their eyes. I was the villain who'd tricked them, who'd hidden his wealth, who'd destroyed their precious Sarah for daring to throw a bracelet. Let them think that. I didn't need their understanding. I didn't need their approval. I'd spent 6 years chasing both and gotten nothing but contempt in return. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I went out to the patio and stood at the railing, looking down at the city spreading out below me. Millions of lights beginning to glow in the gathering dusk. Millions of people living their lives, having their own battles, carrying their own burdens. Somewhere down there, Sarah was processing the ruling, maybe crying, maybe raging, maybe already plotting her appeal despite the futility of it. Her parents were probably surrounding her, reinforcing her victim narrative, telling her I was the monster. But up here, on my patio, in my house, with my future spread out before me like those city lights, I was free. The legal battle was over. The marriage was dissolved. The truth was on record. I'd won not just in court, but in the deeper sense of reclaiming my dignity, my sense of self, my right to be treated with basic respect. Tom was right. This wasn't about satisfaction or revenge. This was about removing poison so something healthier could grow. The marriage had been toxic, slowly, quietly toxic, the kind that seeps into your bones until you forget what it feels like to stand up straight. Now I could stand straight again. My mother called as the last light faded from the sky. James told me, I'm so proud of you, honey. Thanks, Mom. What happens now? I don't know. I guess I figure out who I am when I'm not fighting. You're the same person you've always been. You just forgot for a while. Now you remember. After we hung up, I stayed on the patio until the sky was full dark and the city was just lights and shadows below me. Tomorrow, I'd wake up legally single for the first time in 6 years. The day after that, I'd get back to work, real work, building things, creating value, doing what I was actually good at. But tonight, I just stood there and breathed. Free air, clean air, the air of a life that was finally, completely, undeniably mine. 3 months after the judgment, I sold the house. It surprised everyone, Tom, Marcus, even James. They thought I'd want to keep it, that reclaiming it had been the whole point, and maybe it had been for a while. But standing in those rooms after the divorce was finalized, I realized something. I'd built that house for a version of myself that no longer existed. The man who'd designed every detail, who'd poured his heart into making it perfect. He'd been trying to prove something. To Sarah, to her family, maybe to himself. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The house sold in 4 days for $3 million over asking. Some tech executive who loved the views and didn't care about the history. I signed the papers without hesitation and started looking for something different, something smaller, more authentic. Eventually, I found a mid-century modern place in the Hollywood Hills, 2,000 square feet of glass and wood, built in 1962, with clean lines and honest materials. It needed work, which was perfect. I wanted to build something again, but this time just for me. Work became my salvation in those months. The Phoenix project expanded into 3 additional developments. We broke ground on a mixed-use complex in Austin. The Riverside deal that Sarah had tried to sabotage by calling our investors, it closed successfully, netting the company $8 million. Every success felt like proof that I was more than the failure of my marriage, more than the man who'd been laughed at in his own dining room. But the nights were harder. I'd lie awake in the new house, still mostly empty, furniture sparse, walls bare, and think about Sarah. Not with longing, but with a strange, detached curiosity. Where was she now? What was she doing? Had she learned anything from what happened? Or was she still telling herself the story where I was the villain? I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved back in with her parents, that she'd tried to appeal the judgment and been denied, that she was working at some boutique marketing firm, entry-level position, making maybe $60,000 a year. After 6 years of unlimited access to my money, she was learning what it meant to actually work for a living. I didn't feel triumphant about that. Mostly I felt sad, for both of us, for all the time wasted, for the people we'd failed to be for each other. Tom noticed the melancholy. One evening, about 4 months post-divorce, he showed up at my new place with expensive whiskey and a direct question. "You're not okay." "I'm fine." "Aaron," he settled into one of the few chairs I owned. "You won everything, the house, the money, the judgment. You proved you were right, so why do you look like someone who lost?" I poured us both drinks, considering the question. Because winning didn't fix anything. It just ended things, and now I'm sitting here realizing I spent 6 years of my life on someone who never actually knew me. 6 years, Tom. That's not nothing. No, it's not, but it's also not forever. You're what, 37? 38 next month. 38. You've got 40, 50 more years ahead of you. You really gonna let 6 bad years define the rest? I'm not trying to, I just don't know how to move forward. Every woman I meet, I'm analyzing her, looking for signs, red flags, testing whether she likes me or likes what I can provide. It's exhausting. So stop dating. I'm not dating. Exactly, you're not dating, you're not socializing, you're just working and sitting alone in this empty house feeling sorry for yourself. He softened his tone. "Man, I get it. You went through something traumatic. But at some point, you have to decide if you're going to let it break you or if you're going to let it make you stronger." Everyone keeps saying that, like it's simple. It's not simple, but it is a choice. After he left, I sat with that. A choice. The choice to keep living in the shadow of what Sarah had done, or to step into whatever came next. The choice to let 6 years define my capacity to trust, or to believe that not everyone was like her. It was Maria who actually got me moving again. She called one Saturday morning and said, "Get dressed, nice but not too nice, you're coming to lunch." "Maria, I don't care what you feel like. Be ready in an hour." She picked me up in her SUV, Tom in the passenger seat, and drove to a restaurant in Santa Monica. When we walked in, I realized immediately what she'd done. There was a woman at the table, mid-30s, dark hair, intelligent eyes. She stood when we approached, extending her hand with a warm smile. "You must be Aaron. I'm Rebecca. These two ambushed you too, huh?" I shot Tom a look. He shrugged, completely unapologetic. Lunch was surprisingly easy. Rebecca was an architect working on sustainable housing projects. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly direct. When Tom and Maria excused themselves for some transparently fake reason halfway through the meal, leaving us alone, she laughed. They're not subtle, are they? Not even a little bit. Look, I know you're fresh out of a divorce. Maria told me a bit about it. I'm not looking for anything serious either. I got out of a 5-year relationship 8 months ago. But maybe we could be friends? Compare war stories over coffee sometime? Just friends? Just friends. I promised not to throw anything at your face. I must have flinched because her expression immediately shifted to horrified. Oh my God, I'm sorry. Maria mentioned it, but I didn't think that was incredibly insensitive. No, it's okay. And surprisingly, it was. Friends sounds good. We exchanged numbers. Over the next few weeks, we did grab coffee a few times. Rebecca was easy to talk to, unburdened by expectations. She told me about her ex, a musician who'd been charismatic and unreliable in equal measure. I told her about Sarah, about the marriage, about the trial. She listened without judgment, without trying to fix anything. You know what's weird? She said one afternoon as we walked along the beach in Santa Monica. How long it takes to trust your own judgment again. After my ex, I kept second-guessing everything, every feeling, every instinct. Like, if I was wrong about him, how can I trust myself about anything? Yes, exactly that. But here's what my therapist told me, and you should probably get a therapist if you don't have one already. She said being wrong about one person doesn't mean you're wrong about everyone. It just means you ignored red flags because you wanted to believe in something. That's not a character flaw. That's being human. I thought about that a lot in the weeks that followed. The red flags I'd ignored with Sarah. The early signs that she was more interested in what I could provide than who I was. I'd seen them on some level, but I'd wanted the relationship to work so badly that I'd convinced myself they didn't matter. That was on me, not the abuse. That was all Sarah. But the staying, the hoping, the 6 years of trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it, that was my choice, my mistake. And the only way to move forward was to acknowledge it, learn from it, and do better next time. I did start seeing a therapist. Dr. Eleanor Park, a woman in her 60s who'd specialized in trauma and relationships for 3 decades. She didn't coddle me or tell me everything I did was justified. She pushed me to examine my own patterns, my own role in choosing and staying with someone like Sarah. You built your entire identity around achievement, she told me in one session, around being successful, being wealthy, being able to provide. That's not inherently bad, but it made you vulnerable to someone who valued you only for those things. So what do? You figure out who you are beyond your net worth. What do you value? What brings you joy? What would you want in a partner even if you were broke? Those questions haunted me. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I'd been so busy building my empire, proving myself, that I'd never stopped to ask what I actually wanted from life beyond success. So I started experimenting. I took a pottery class, terrible at it, but enjoyed the meditative quality of working with clay. I joined a hiking group and spent weekends in the mountains, disconnected from emails and business calls. I volunteered at a housing nonprofit, using my skills to help people who actually needed them. Slowly, gradually, I started to feel like myself again. Not the self I'd been with Sarah, constantly trying to be enough. Not the self I'd been during the divorce, focused solely on winning, but some new version, or maybe just an older version I'd forgotten. The version who'd started with nothing and built something because he loved building, not because he needed to prove anything. 6 months after the judgment, I got a letter. Hand-delivered to my office, no return address. I recognized Sarah's handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won. Aaron, it read, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. I know I don't have the right to ask anything of you, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not because of the money or the house or any of that. I'm sorry because you were right about all of it. I didn't love you the way I should have. I didn't value you. I took you for granted and treated you terribly, and you deserve so much better. I'm in therapy now, learning about myself, about why I am the way I am. It doesn't excuse what I did. Nothing excuses it, but I'm trying to be better. Trying to understand how I became someone who could do what I did to someone who only ever tried to make me happy. You don't need to respond to this. You don't owe me anything. I just wanted you to know that you were right to leave. You were right about everything. I hope you find someone who treats you the way you should have been treated from the beginning. You deserve that, Sarah. I read the letter 3 times. Sitting in my office alone with the afternoon sun streaming through the windows, there was no manipulation in it, no attempt to worm her way back into my life, just accountability, acknowledgement, the thing I'd wanted from her all along. I thought about responding, thought about what I might say, but in the end I filed the letter away in a drawer and didn't reply, not because I was still angry, but because there was nothing left to say. Sarah's journey toward understanding herself wasn't mine to participate in. My journey was my own. That night, I went to dinner with Rebecca, Tom, and Maria. We laughed about stupid things, told stories, made plans for a weekend trip to Joshua Tree. Normal things, friend things, life things. As I drove home through the hills, windows down, city lights spreading out below me, I realized something. I was happy. Not the desperate, prove-yourself happiness I chased with Sarah. Not the vindictive satisfaction of winning the divorce. Just content, at peace with where I was and cautiously optimistic about where I was going. The man who'd stood bleeding in his dining room 7 months ago felt like a different person, someone I barely recognized. He'd been so desperate to be loved that he'd accepted scraps and called it a feast. I wasn't that man anymore. I was someone who knew his worth, someone who wouldn't settle for less than genuine care and respect, someone who understood that being alone was infinitely better than being with someone who made you feel alone. The gift Sarah had thrown at my face, she'd meant it as an insult, as trash. But maybe it had been the best gift she could have given me, the final push I needed to walk away and find myself again. 1 year later, almost to the day, I stood on the observation deck of the building Tom and I had just finished in downtown Los Angeles. 20 stories of mixed-use space, sustainable design, affordable housing integrated with market-rate units. It was the project I was most proud of, not because of the money it would make, but because it actually mattered. Real people would live and work here. Real lives would be built in spaces I'd helped create. Rebecca stood next to me, our shoulders touching comfortably. We'd been together for 4 months now, slowly, carefully, both of us taking our time. She'd met the version of me that existed after Sarah, the one who'd learned to value himself. I'd met the version of her that existed after her musician, the one who'd learned that love shouldn't be chaos. "You did good," she said, looking out at the view. "This is really beautiful." "We did good. Your sustainable systems made this work." She smiled. We'd collaborated on the project, her architectural firm handling the environmental design. Working together had been surprisingly easy, built on mutual respect and genuine partnership. The kind of collaboration I'd once thought I had with Sarah, but never actually did. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "I saw the article about your new building. It's beautiful. Congratulations. You're doing amazing things. I'm happy for you." I showed Rebecca. She still reaches out sometimes, every few months. "How does that make you feel?" "Nothing much, maybe a little sick, but not for me, for her, for what she could have had if she'd just been different." "Do you ever think about responding?" I considered that, watching the sun set over the city. "No, what would I say? We're strangers who spent 6 years together. The person she's becoming, I hope that's real. I hope she's actually learning and growing. But it's not my concern anymore. My concern is this." I gestured at the building, at the city, at her. "The life I'm building now." Tom found us on the deck, holding 3 glasses of champagne. "They're starting the dedication ceremony downstairs. You ready?" "Ready." We took the elevator down to the lobby, where city officials, investors, and future residents gathered. I gave a short speech about vision and community, about building spaces that honored people rather than just housing them. Rebecca squeezed my hand when I mentioned the importance of collaboration and genuine partnership. Afterward, my mother found me in the crowd. She'd flown down for the ceremony, proud and beaming. "Your father would have loved this," she said, and I felt something tighten in my chest. My father, who'd taught me to build with my hands, who died before he could see what I'd become. "I think he'd be proud," I said. "I know he would be." As the evening wound down, I stood in the lobby of my building, our building, and looked around at the space we'd created. Modern but warm, functional but beautiful, honest in its materials and generous in its proportions. This was what I'd been trying to build all along. Not just buildings, but a life of integrity. A life where what I created reflected who I actually was, not who someone else needed me to be. Sarah had thrown a gift at my face and called it trash. She'd thrown our marriage away with the same contempt. And in doing so, she'd freed me to become someone better. The Cartier bracelet was in a safety deposit box somewhere, along with her letter and the court judgment. Artifacts of a life I'd left behind. Sometimes I thought about donating the bracelet, turning that symbol of rejection into something useful for someone else. But not yet. For now, it stayed where it was, evidence that I'd survived, that I'd learned, that I'd moved on. Rebecca appeared at my elbow. "Ready to go? Tom and Maria want to grab dinner." "Yeah, let's go." We walked out into the Los Angeles night, into the city I'd rebuilt myself in, into the future I was still constructing one day at a time. Behind me, the building stood tall and solid, proof that destruction could lead to creation, that endings could become beginnings, that sometimes the best gift you can receive is the one that finally sets you free.